What is up everyone, I am CBMF Productions and welcome back to another video on my channel. So today I wanted to do an updated Blu-ray collection video because it's been like a year and a half since I last did one, and back then I had a much smaller count than I have now. Mainly because of the pandemic, I wanted to get back into Blu-ray collecting. When I did my collection video last, I was kind of at a point where I only collected a handful of Blu-rays every single like 6 months or whatever. I wasn't really that much into collecting Blu-rays around the time last year, like right before the pandemic broke out. But now because of it, I've just decided to pick up a lot of stuff, and now I have a lot more varied stuff. I have also departed some Blu-rays just because I want to have more of a quality consistency to my collection. So not everything's just going to be a rehash of what we saw last time, if you remember the last video. And it's going to be a different style from last time where I was going to show each Blu-ray individually without my face on screen. I want to really show these nice shelves that I got from Target last year that I've only collected more of since, and just show all the new additions I've added to the collection, and just get a chance to talk about movies I don't usually get to talk about on the channel. So when I show each and every Blu-ray I own right now, there are some duplicates and some Blu-rays I forgot to give away on a box on the side over here, but I'm really only going to focus on the ones I have on my shelves. So I'm going to go through each and every shelf that I own right now, which are organized that start with the numbers and then go from A to Z. I'm going to be talking about each movie individually, with the exception of the Marvel and DC movies I own, just because I talk about those movies so much on my channel that I want to save space for movies I actually don't really get a chance to talk about. So I will leave links to each and every single one of the Marvel and DC reviews I've done thus far and all the rankings that I've done, just to avoid feeling derivative. Okay, let's not waste any more time and get into my Blu-ray collection video. Jump cut. What? Look at this! A Blu-ray stack? Well, time to talk about it. Alright, so the first Blu-ray that I own, alphabetically at least, we got 12 Angry Men. This is a Criterion Blu-ray. I own quite a few Criterions in this set. This is the film by Sidney Lumet. This is the original film. And this is one of those movies that I kind of bought just because of this legacy. I was like, okay, I'm going to cross it off my list. And watching this movie for the first time, it was a lot better than I thought it would be. But yeah, this is a movie that, because of how old it was, and I'm usually not a guy that's like opposed to older movies, it's just because a lot of them really do take their time, and a lot of them, you know, you hear a lot about the reputation, about the legacy, that they get so hyped up in your head that when you finally get to watch them, you're like, oh, I've seen it already, I know all the twists and turns. But this one genuinely surprised me how much I liked it. Great courtroom drama, very much confined into just one space, one room for the entire movie, basically kind of playing out like a stage play. Overall, it's a very engaging story, very lovable characters, and just a lot of good dynamics in this movie. It's just very enjoyable, and I highly recommend it if you haven't checked it out yet. And just, I'm going very much off the cuff, so sorry if I kind of like, you know, muddle my lines here and there. Next up, we got 12 Monkeys. This is the time travel movie by Terry Gilliam. Stars Bruce Willis, Brad Pitt, and it's Terry Gilliam. If you know him, you know his style. It's a very weird, quirky time travel movie with a lot of weird imagery, a lot of very much visual style that you know if you've seen films like Brazil and stuff like that. Very interesting movie. Definitely check it out. Then we got 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. I saw this in theaters with my dad, and definitely was a different direction for Michael Bay to take his direction place towards. And it's a decent movie. I thought I was a lot more high on it when I first saw it, when it came out 5 years ago. I was in middle school back then, so any movie that I saw in theaters, I basically loved. And John Krasinski does a good job in the lead role. I can definitely see why he got hired for the Jack Ryan series on Amazon, because he definitely does a good job playing a tough guy persona. And there's a lot of good, like, you know, action scenes in this movie that feel very practical, very much feel on edge. It's just that there's a lot of cliches in this movie. There's a lot of stuff that just you can tell from a lot of war movies of where it goes, and it's definitely way too long. I think the movie's like 2.5 hours. So, you know, it has its issues, but I do recommend it. Then we get 21 and 22 Jump Street. A great duology by Christopher Lord and Phil Lord, Chris Miller, sorry. These are just two great comedies. This should have been a disaster given the fact that this is a reboot of an 80s TV series, and we know how those go. But the fact that Phil Lord and Chris Miller do such a great job behind the camera, and Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill in front of the camera do such a great job because their chemistry is just so much fun. They just build off so well off of each other. The visual gags are great. The writing is fantastic. These are just very much enjoyable movies. And if we ever do get those string of sequels that we were teased at the end of 22 Jump Street, I would love to see them. Next up, we got 50-50. This is the Joseph Gordon-Levitt Seth Rogen comedy about Seth Rogen trying to accompany Joseph Gordon-Levitt as he gets cancer or diagnosed with cancer, and he has a 50-50 chance of living. Very good comedy, has a lot of good strengths about it. Has some good drama in here too. Very enjoyable comedy, not great, but I had a good time with it. Next up, we got 50 First Dates, an Adam Sandler comedy, the second time he teamed up with Drew Barrymore. I covered this on my Adam Sandler retrospective, where I covered every single Adam Sandler film. I'll probably leave a link or a card up to it in the description or above. This is definitely not a great movie. I think it kind of has a little bit of a sappy ending, and there's definitely some pacing issues, and Rob Schneider playing yet again another racial stereotype is not really that funny. But for the most part, it's a very sweet movie, has really good performances, and has a good message at the very end of it. Next up, we got 500 Days of Summer. This is the Mark Webb dramedy, again starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel, basically about just what a real romance is in real life. This is a very real movie. I know I'm saying that a lot, but this is a very grounded film that is very much off the cuff, very much feels realistic. It doesn't go by the cliches of a lot of romantic comedies, and I weirdly wish that Mark Webb does more movies like this instead of the Amazing Spider-Man movies. He did Gifted with Chris Evans a few years ago, which I really liked, but he hasn't done much since, and I don't know, movies like these are very few and far between. Next up, we got 1917. This is a fantastic war movie. I'm not a huge war movie guy, but seeing this in the theater, especially for the first time, I saw this twice in theaters, by the way, which is a very rare thing that I do. But seeing this opening night a year and a half ago, I loved the experience of this movie, especially the scene wherever this guy, I forgot his name, but whenever he gets knocked out and he wakes up in this destroyed building, and he walks and you see like the flares reflect off all these destroyed buildings, and like the score by, I forgot whose name, he did Skyfall, I think, but not the director, but also the composer. But the score was just so fantastic, and like the visuals, it's the reason why I like to go to the theaters, because you cannot recreate that experience. But yeah, the one shot aesthetic that Sam Mendes brought to this film I thought was really well done. Yes, it does kind of cheat in a couple aspects, but I really enjoyed the aesthetic of it. Very much feels like you're with the characters. Has a very simple story, just great cinematography, great score, great atmosphere. It's a fantastic war movie. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. And I think, is this the last number movie that I own? No, yeah, this is the last number one movie that I own. I got this triple feature of 3 Stanley Kubrick movies. We got 2001: A Space Odyssey, A Clockwork Orange, and The Shining. All 3 of these movies are fantastic. If I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be The Shining. But, I mean, what can I say about these movies that haven't already been said about them? They're, perfection. Then we get into the A's. We have The Accountant. This is the Ben Affleck's take on the Bourne franchise, and it is really fun. I have not seen it since theaters, but I do remember having a really good time with it. Basically revolving around Ben Affleck, who's an autistic man who tries to work around his mental disability to, become this elite assassin, and it's very well done. Great performances, really good twist in here, very suspenseful in a lot of ways, really good choreography in a lot of ways as well, very enjoyable, and if we ever do get a sequel, I'm down for it. Next up, we have Ad Astra. This is Brad Pitt's take on sci-fi genre, where he basically tries to search for his father, played by Tommy Lee Jones, who's stuck on Neptune. And very trippy movie, very much not what you expect. It's not this, rambunctious sci-fi thriller that keeps you on the edge. It's very much a drama that has the aesthetic of a sci-fi movie. Great direction by, I think, James Gray directed this movie. Yeah, James Gray. Really good subdued performance by Brad Pitt, who doesn't really go for the Oscar jabs that you would expect for a film like this. Very emotional movie. I have not seen it since theaters, but I do remember really enjoying it. Next up, we got the first box set of this collection that I'm going to talk about, and this is the Alfred Hitchcock box set. This is not every single film that he owns. This is mainly his greatest hits, so to speak. Basically, I bought this for myself for my birthday last summer, and I have only seen a handful of these movies. Alfred Hitchcock, of course, he's a genius of suspense. He's one of the most influential filmmakers of all time. But I have not seen a lot of his movies. So the films that are included in this box set is, we got Saboteur, which is the first film that I did watch of this box set, and I enjoyed it. Pretty good thriller. We got Shadow of a Doubt. Let me see if I can put this on the camera. So Shadow of a Doubt. We got Rope. I have not seen that. Rear Window, I did watch. I kind of watched half of it in my AVTF 1 class freshman year, and I kind of fell asleep on it. No, I don't remember. I do remember it was sophomore year, AVTF2, and we were gonna finish this movie, and we never did. We only watched like the first 2/3. I didn't fully watch it until last year, but it was a pretty good thriller. I do think it's overrated though. Trouble with Harry, haven't seen it. The Man Who Knew Too Much, haven't seen it. Vertigo, great thriller. I do really enjoy this one. North by Northwest, have not seen that one, which is probably like the biggest sin out of his collection. The original Psycho, I've seen this one, definitely his best movie in my opinion. Really suspenseful, great performance by Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh. He Wouldn't Even Hurt a Fly. Fantastic movie. The Birds, I've only seen pieces of this movie in my AVTF1 class. We would watch movies to kind of like take notes on them like you usually do in most classes whenever you watch a movie. And I don't like to watch movies in class just because I don't like to watch movies in segments where it's like your class is only 40 minutes long and the movie's like 2 hours, so you have to break in like 3 or 4 days. I don't know. I never liked that, so I never paid attention to movies in that. And The Birds was one of those movies where I just haven't really gave it a second to watch yet. Then we got Marnie, haven't seen it. Torn Curtain, haven't seen it. And we got Frenzy, which I haven't seen it, and Family Plot, I have not seen it. And then we got also Alfred Hitchcock Presents and the Alfred Hitchcock Hour. Huge set, has a great booklet in here too. And to put you in perspective, I usually watch a lot of the Blu-rays I own. Like I think like 95% of the Blu-rays I own I have seen. This was just one because again, getting into older movies is very much a hard task for me. I've seen a lot of them. It's just, they're a different flavor from today's more modern style. And I'm talking about more like the past 30, 40 years. When you go behind the 70s, it's for me, it's a little bit hard to get into them. But for the films I have seen of them, I have liked so far. And I don't know. I can't wait to get more into it in the future. Next up, we have another box set. We have the Alien 6-film collection. This contains pretty much every Alien movie besides the AVP movies, which I don't mind because those movies suck, especially the second one. So this contains Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, Resurrection, Prometheus, and Alien Covenant. I did recently rank all these movies in every film franchise ranked part 4, which I'll put in a card up above, hopefully if I remember it. So I have discussed these movies recently to put in a Cliff Notes version. The first 2 films are definitely 2 of the best sci-fi horror films ever made. Alien 3, the assembly cut I actually quite enjoy, but definitely nowhere near the quality of the first 2. Sure deserved a lot better. Alien Resurrection, I don't like whatsoever. Prometheus and Alien Covenant, I both like, but both aren't as good as they should have been. And I don't think we'll ever get to close that trilogy. I don't know what the FX series that Ridley Scott's doing, but I don't think it will be, a full conclusion. I think it'll be something different. And we should have gotten a Neil Blomkamp Alien movie, but he got screwed over, but we're not here to talk about that. Next up, we got Alita Battle Angel. This is a movie where I did see in theaters, and this is a movie where I did actually watch this in 3D. I'm not a 3D guy. I remember when I was young, like I would watch movies like Toy Story 3 and Rio in 3D, but I would not wear the glasses because I was stubborn because I already am wearing glasses, so I would just wear them, and that's probably why I have fucked up vision now. But I did watch this in 3D a couple years ago because I heard how amazing the 3D was, and it was actually very fun. This is probably my favorite 3D experience I've ever had in the theater. Very enjoyable movie, and once again, I'm not an anime guy, so getting into like this more modern Americanized version of it seemed like a disaster because basically every other version of anime that we've seen from live action, like Ghost in the Shell or Full Metal Alchemist or is Avatar anime? Or The Last Airbender, we can throw that in there. You know what I mean, Death Note, like a lot of anime stuff that gets translated turns out crap, but this one was actually pretty good. If we ever do get a sequel to this, I would not be opposed to it. I would actually really enjoy that. Then we got a 2-pack of American History X and A History of Violence. I'm not going to be talking about this movie because it's a DC imprint movie, but great movie. But American History X, fantastic movie. Definitely a movie that you kind of watch once and you never watch again because it's so powerful and very hard to watch in a lot of aspects. Has a great message about hate and how that hate transcends through, the loved ones around you, and just does not shy away from a lot of stuff like biting the curb. Very demented stuff, but it's important to watch. Then we have American Hustle. I think I watched this for the first time earlier this year. A very good movie by David O. Russell, huge cast, and very enjoyable in a lot of spots, but I'm not a huge fan of biopics. I'm not a huge fan of Oscar bait movies. And although I do really enjoy this movie, I will say it's not fantastic. And I don't know. I know he has that David O. Russell has a new movie coming out, Babylon, I think, which has a huge cast as well. He does a he does a great job at, bringing all these gigantic actors, these presences on screen together and just making them clash and work together so well. And it's very enjoyable, but, it's not fantastic in my opinion. Then we have American Mary. Kind of bought this as a blind buy because I heard a couple good things about it, and it's quite enjoyable. It revolves around this med student who basically becomes a serial killer, and it's very demented in a lot of ways, but it's very enjoyable too. Then we have American Psycho. This is a new Blu-ray that I have for this movie because the previous version I owned on Blu-ray did not work with my Xbox or my PS4. Those are the two things I use for my Blu-ray players. And I bought a new copy of it last year because this is my top 10 of all time. I do plan on doing a top 100 movies of all time video, and you will see this movie on this list because I absolutely love it. Christian Bale, my favorite performance of his as Patrick Bateman, completely demented, completely narcissistic, but in the best way possible, devoid of any sort of empathy, and it's just so entertaining to watch his, on-screen presence and how he just puts on a face and how, his monologues go on, and, the business card scene is iconic for it. Just amazing movie, great gore, great messaging, great satire. It's an amazing movie in my opinion. Then we get American Sniper, one of the later movies by Clint Eastwood, which got a huge lot of Oscar buzz, and I watched it and I was like, it's a good movie. Very much focused on PTSD and after the war and how it affects you, and it doesn't shy away from a lot of stuff. It's pretty solid. It definitely helms to a lot of the cliches, but for what it was, I enjoyed it. Then we have American Werewolf in London, one of the best showcases of practical effects in a movie of all time. The transformation sequence of, I forgot the main guy turning into a werewolf by Rick Baker. Amazing stuff. Probably some of the best stuff you'll ever see on screen, on top with like John Carpenter's The Thing. But yeah. Great practical effects. Apart from that, still pretty solid movie, but I will say it is slightly overrated. It's not one of my favorite films of all time by any means. As a very weird ending that kind of feels abrupt, and some of the side characters are very odd, but I do like the main character's friend who gets killed very early on in the movie, kind of like haunts him like a demon on his shoulder throughout the entire movie, and that's pretty enjoyable. But it's not great in my opinion, but I do enjoy it. Then we have Annihilation, has probably the creepiest sound effect in any movie in this film. The alien noises are terrifying. I didn't see this in theaters, sadly. I did check it out when it came to Blu-ray, and it's very, very effective. Really enjoyed the story, really enjoyed the characters. The acting's fantastic. The visuals are really good. This is by Alex Garland. It's the same guy who did Ex Machina, which I also own, which we'll talk about later. And it's a great way of blending practical and visual effects. The whole look of the shimmer and just the way it affects earth objects and animals and stuff like that is very, very unique, and has a lot of good elements, and has enough weird sci-fi stuff to where it doesn't feel pretentious, but it definitely feels different amongst the huge sci-fi genre we find ourselves in today. Very enjoyable movie, highly recommend it. Then we have this Nightmare on Elm Street collection. This contains the first 7 original films in the series. This is the original Nightmare on Elm Street through New Nightmare. Does not include the remake or Freddy vs. Jason. I really enjoyed the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I ranked this a couple years ago on the first installment of every film franchise ranked, and I still kind of hold true to this series being definitely one of the most influential, and there's a reason why it's one of the biggest franchises of all time in horror, because Freddy Krueger, Wes Craven came out with a very interesting concept and a terrifying concept of this killer that kills you in your sleep, that you cannot run from, that you'll eventually get tired out and you'll have to face him whether you like it or not. Very, very effective concept. Robert Englund, of course, he's iconic in the role of Freddy Krueger. There's some fantastic one-liners he gives, and just, the original Nightmare on Elm Street is one of my favorite films of all time. I love it to death. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, I really enjoyed Dream Warriors, and I really also enjoyed New Nightmare. I really like the fact that Wes Craven came back to the directing chair in that film and very much went meta, and I really enjoy it. The rest of the sequels kind of range. I really do find Freddy's Revenge the most frustrating film, just because it has some of the best aspects of Freddy Krueger. I think he's probably my favorite Freddy out of any of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but it's so weird and it feels so off-kilter from the rest of the series that it feels like an oddball amongst the franchise. And then 4 and 5, and especially 6, they kind of like devolve into Freddy being a slapstick joke, which I don't really enjoy. But I still enjoyed the series overall, and you know, there's a reason why I own all of them, because I would love to binge them whenever we hopefully get a new one in the future, because it's been like over a decade since it came out, or when the remake came out. But great series. Then we have Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Then we have Apocalypse Now. This was a recent pickup by me. One of the best war movies ever made. Definitely worth a watch. This contains the original film, the Redux version, and Hearts of Darkness, a documentary focusing on the making of. And yeah, very effective movie. Marlon Brando gives one of his best performances of all time whenever he's just hiding in the shadows, that bald head. Fantastic direction by Francis Ford Coppola. Fantastic performances. Great cinematography, focusing on like just the true, just how man just evolves into war and just how it psychologically affects you. Fantastic film. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out, because there's a reason why it's considered a classic. Then we have Aquaman. And then we have A Quiet Place 1 and 2. This was a recent pickup, mainly the second one. I do enjoy both these movies, but I do feel they're quite overrated in a lot of aspects. I still quite enjoy them, it's just I don't love them a lot of people do. I really enjoyed the first one when it first came out. I saw it in theaters, and I watched it once at home. I did recently rewatch it right before I watched the second one, and I did find a lot more holes in it, mainly because of the video that YMS put out, focusing on so many of the issues where it's like the nail on the floor, or how, you know, Emily Blunt is giving birth within like 30 seconds and is able to be completely silent, and, you know, she doesn't have to cut any sort of umbilical cord. On top of that, like, does a stupid jump scare sequence where she slams against the glass, and there's certain stuff like the whole mattress thing where it's like, why are you not being underneath that mattress the entire time while you're playing board games under it, just unnecessarily putting you at risk. There's a lot of stuff where John Krasinski does a great job at handling the tension. It's just the film itself has to break its own rules in the universe in order to make that tension work, and it's frustrating. And the second film has a lot of the same issues where, you know, you have the son being the sole caretaker of the baby, and he's doing his own thing where it makes no sense. And, you know, these films, for me, I think there is some potential that they could improve with more films. Hopefully Jeff Nichols, with his spinoff in the works, hopefully he improves a lot of the issues that these movies have. But these films are still really solid. The concept is genius. The acting is really good, especially from Emily Blunt and the child actors. The score is great. The cinematography I love. And John Krasinski, he just does a great job at, you know, handling horror and suspense very well. I just think that there are a lot of issues that people kind of ignore. Let's see. Then we have Argo on 4K. This is the first 4K Blu-ray you'll see in this collection. Really enjoyed this movie. Probably my favorite Ben Affleck directed movie. Very great biopic. One that I think is very, very suspenseful. Great cast, great score, great cinematography. There's a reason why this won Best Picture of the Oscars. Alright, next up we have Arrival. This is the first film by Denis Villeneuve that I own, that you'll see a lot more of his filmography later in the video. And this is a pretty cool sci-fi movie. I watched it when it first came out. I haven't seen it since then, but I do remember really enjoying this movie. Very interesting concept, very interesting take on a time travel movie, which Denis Villeneuve does a great job at just handling very similar concepts with just a different vision, because he's just so unique as a director. Great performances by Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, Forrest Whitaker, a lot of other great actors in the movie. I do plan on rewatching this right before Dune comes out, just to see his take and how it contrasts to that film, because it's definitely a different era of sci-fi. But yeah, pretty solid movie. Then we have A Star Is Born. This is the most recent edition, or the most recent remake, starring Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, which I've talked about a lot of Bradley Cooper movies already in this video. And we got, what's it? American Sniper, American Hustle, and then we got this. But I saw this in theaters, really had not a lot of expectations for it. I'm not really a huge musical guy, but I quite enjoyed this. I haven't seen it since theaters, but there's a reason why this won a lot of good awards and stuff like that. Performances are great, very tragic story brought to life by just beautiful direction by Bradley Cooper. He knows how to handle these emotions very well, and it just feels very grounded, very realistic, doesn't shy away from a lot of the dark sides of romance. Really well done. Then we have the triple feature of the Austin Powers trilogy. International Man of Mystery is definitely my favorite. I think it's the most unique, and I think because it was the first one, it had the most spark and had the most unique style of comedy out there, where the next two sequels, which I do enjoy, definitely had diminishing returns in my opinion. Then we have, let me get this. Then we have the 4 Avengers films. We have Avengers, we have Avengers Age of Ultron, we have Infinity War, and Endgame. Put this over here. Then we get into the B's with Baby Driver. This is the most recent film by Edgar Wright. Saw this in theaters, have seen it multiple times since. Loved this movie. It was a complete surprise when it came out a little over 4 years ago. And I love Edgar Wright. He's one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, especially my favorite filmmaker working today. Just absolute perfection with this movie. Like, with the exception of The World's End, which I still think is a pretty damn good movie, the rest of his films have been fantastic. I own every single one of his movies, and my most anticipated film for the rest of the year is Last Night in Soho. But apart from the, praising his direction in this movie, the cast is fantastic. The score and the music and the soundtrack is just brilliant. The action is very well directed. At the pace is fantastic. The writing's very funny and suspenseful when it needs to be. Just fantastic movie all around. Then we have the Back to the Future trilogy. This is like one of the most re-releasable movies of all time, because like there's like a new edition every like 5 years this movie comes out. I've seen these movies a couple times when I was younger. I've not seen these films in years, mainly because some are like Star Wars. It's like such a referenced movie and a reference trilogy to where it's like, do I really need to rewatch these movies again? Because I can recite all these movies line by line just because of how many people reference it. But the first film's fantastic. The sequels are pretty good. 3 was always my favorite as a kid, but I've turned to the first film being my favorite now. Very fun characters. Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd are still very likable as Marty McFly and Doc Brown. The cast is very solid, and how they changed throughout the course of the trilogy is very fun. Really good movie, or a really good set of trilogy. Then we have Bad Boys for Life, the 3rd film of the Bad Boys series, and was way better than it should have been. If you told me like 2 years ago that this would be the highest grossing movie of last year domestically, I would say that you're completely crazy. But times are weird. But this was a very enjoyable movie. This might be my favorite out of the Bad Boys movies, because this film does a great job at just taking this series and just turning it on its head and being completely different. It takes what works about the first 2 films in the chemistry between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence and just having fun with it. Michael Bay not returning, I think, was a good decision on Sony's part, and just the film's just very fun and very enjoyable. It's not fantastic by any means, but has a lot of fun. It really revives a franchise which no one forgot about forever. Then we have Bad Times at the El Royale. I just talked about this movie as of the time of recording. My review for this movie just dropped in underrated films, so I'll leave a little card up above. But great movie. Fantastic cast, one of my favorites of all time personally. It sucks that this movie did not do better at the box office just because it's such a fun movie. A lot of people can say this is a Tarantino clone, which I say that, since Tarantino is not making many movies anymore, I think we need more films like it. But regardless, Drew Goddard does such a great job because it feels so similar to Cabin in the Woods, with how the film will just take you on a ride with how many twists it goes on, and the film's suspenseful, it's funny, it's engaging. It's just a blast of a movie, and I wish more people discovered it. Then we have this 4-pack of Batman films. We got the Schumacher films and the Burton movies: Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin. And then the last of the first stack of this Blu-ray collection is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, the Ultimate Edition. Alright, getting to stack number 2, we start off with another Tim Burton movie, Beetlejuice. I'm not a huge fan of Tim Burton, personally. I think that a lot of his movies, for me, just don't really hit that well. But I will say, his early stuff really does work for me, and Beetlejuice is definitely one of them. Michael Keaton is fantastic as a title character. The supporting cast is very funny. The film is dark when it needs to be and very much has that aesthetic of a Tim Burton film, but it just works for this film. It's very enjoyable, very funny. Has some, emotional elements that make you invest in the characters and the whole family. But yeah, I have a good time with this. Then we have the Before trilogy on Criterion. This is the trilogy by Richard Linklater, starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, basically just chronicling their life over 3 decades as they're just, talking around and, discussing about life and going through different stages of their life and just, being mature. Richard Linklater is a fantastic director, and these films are no exception. Personally, my favorite would probably be Before Midnight, and these films also have just, fantastic artwork, too, if you can see. It's just, beautiful stuff. But all 3 films are pretty solid, pretty great. Before Sunset's probably my least favorite just because it has the least amount of plot. But it is cool, the fact that it does take place in real time, basically. And Sunrise was just a fantastic start to an amazing trilogy. Very mature. Some of the best romance films I ever watched. Some of the best romance films I ever watched. Then we have Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon, a fantastic documentary on this horror genre. This is a must-watch for horror fans. You have basically Leslie Vernon, who's this up-and-coming serial killer, and these like documentary crew is here to basically record his uprising and see, document his uprising and see, how he's gonna rank. Because this is set in a world where Freddy, Michael, and Jason all exist, and basically their how they kill is basically just like standard rules for how serial killers, want to grow up in the world. You have Robert Englund basically playing the Dr. Loomis character, and it's just very funny and just very enjoyable too. Then we have Being John Malkovich in Criterion. Very, very interesting movie. Charlie Kaufman screenplay, Spike Jonze directing. Very, very unique. Has a really good concept about John Cusack finding this hole that you can see inside of John Malkovich's head and see through his eyes, and it's very odd concept that has a lot of good messaging in there and is a lot smarter than you realize. Then we had the Belko Experiment. This is a James Gunn written battle royale type movie where you have a bunch of office workers stuck inside a building, and they have to kill all of each other within 90 minutes, or else like they have like these it's kind of like Suicide Squad, where they have these like little tracers in their heads and they'll explode, they don't kill each other. And it's a very cool concept, which I think is very, disappointing in all of aspects. I will say I do have some nostalgia towards this movie just because I remember seeing this film. I kind of stuck into this movie because I was in 8th grade when this movie came out, and my dad had sneak us into this AMC theater, which was the first time I had been to this my local AMC theater by the mall, in which I live in, and being in these recliner seats and seeing like this huge, larger-than-life screen, I do remember having good memories, just like being in awe of like the theater and having a good time with my friends. But I will say this film could have been a lot better. Then we have Better Off Dead. This is a recent pickup by my mom, actually. She doesn't usually do this, but she picked this up off of Amazon, and we as a family watched it together, and it's actually a pretty solid movie. A good comedy starring John Cusack, basically just being this weird guy trying to get with his ex-girlfriend, and like in a ski competition and not realizing that love's right in front of him, and just a lot of kooky characters, a lot of good one-liners, and just a good time capsule of the 80s. Sorry, I couldn't get that word out of my mouth. Then we have Beverly Hills Cop. This is the first movie. It picked us off of Target because I have this weird section where it's like kind of like classic movies where you can only get them for like $5 to $7, and I picked this up on the cheap. And yeah, because I watched all three of these movies. I watched all three of these films for the first time last year during quarantine, just because I'd never seen them before, and I want to catch up on some classic comedies. And I really enjoyed the first Beverly Hills Cop. Very much a staple of the early 80s, seeing how vulgar you can see Eddie Murphy gets, and just all the insanity and action is in this film, and just very, very enjoyable to see all these movies like Judge Reinhold at their peak comedy. I enjoyed the second movie, but it's nowhere near as good, and the third film kind of sucks, and I hope we don't get another one, just because seeing what happened with Coming to America, I don't want to see Eddie Murphy return to a previously established IP of his. I would rather see him do more stuff like Dolomite Is My Name. But as for this film, really enjoy it, and yeah, have a good time with it. Then we have Big. This is the classic film starring Tom Hanks, where he's basically an older version of a kid that wishes that he is an adult, and a lot of good messages, has some very emotional moments, has a lot of classic moments like the piano you see on the cover. Just, very sweet movie. Then we have The Big Lebowski, one of those classic comedies by the Coen brothers. I have not seen this one in quite a while, but I do remember really enjoying it. Great cast, especially with Jeff Bridges and John Goodman, just having great clashing amongst each other with like Steve Buscemi in the bowling alley. A lot of fun stuff in here, but not one of my favorites of all time, though, I will say. Then we have The Big Sick. This is just a very sweet romantic comedy. I saw this in theaters with my grandma while my parents were on vacation one summer. The summer this came out like 4 years ago. And it's just a very sweet story, especially since it's based on Kumail Nanjiani's real-life romance, where he dated this white woman, and like you have the two different cultures clashing amongst one another, because you have Kumail Nanjiani's family wanting him to date a woman of his race, and basically teaching how you can have a good mixed race relations and you can meet with other cultures, and you don't have to be so against them. Very sweet movie, has a lot of good comedy in it, and it's just one of those romantic comedies that have come out in the past few years. Then we have the Big Trouble in Little China. This is John Carpenter's main action film outside of Escaping New York that people remember him for. Also starring Kurt Russell. Kind of is like homage to samurai films and stuff of that sort. Very unique film in his filmography. Definitely like just stands out like a sore thumb in the best way possible. Very unique. I'm not a massive fan of John Carpenter outside of the original Halloween. I do respect him. I do like a lot of his movies, but I don't think they're as fantastic as a lot of people say he's just not my flavor in a lot of ways, and this is a good movie, but it's not one that I like to rewatch a whole lot. Then we have this double feature of Bill and Ted Excellent Adventure and Bogus Journey, and we also have Face the Music. So this trilogy of films, I quite enjoy them, I will say. The first film's really my favorite. I like time travel movies, and this is a very good spoof on the time travel genre and the rules of it. I love George Carlin. Bogus Journey, I think, is okay, but it kind of strays away from the time travel concept and is really a lot weirder than the first film. It's actually my least favorite of the trilogy. Still enjoyable. I love William Sadler's death, especially like the whole scene whenever him and Bill and Ted are in hell, battling each other against different games, and he's like, best 2 out of 3, best 4 out of 5. Great stuff. And then we have Face the Music, which is a lot better than I thought it would be. Great conclusion to the trilogy. I thought it would just be like a cheap cash grab nostalgia piece that would just only set up the future of the franchise for these 2 girls, Bill and Ted's daughters, but actually does a great job of just being a good conclusion to a trilogy. And then we have Birdman, The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. Definitely one of the best Oscar films I've seen in quite a while. A very unique film by Alejandro G. Inarritu. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Michael Keaton is basically the movie that kind of brought him back onto his feet as a main star before they started stuff like Need for Speed. But fantastic performances, great camera work and cinematography, all being basically shot or edited to look like it's all shot at once, and just beautiful cinematography, great story, very engaging, very entertaining, doesn't have a beat that misses, just very, very enjoyable movie. Then we have Birds of Prey and the horribly long subtitle that I refuse to read. Then we have Black Klansman, the film that was kind of like the breakout for John David Washington, and one of Spike Lee's best movies in quite past few years. Great story, great characters, great acting, showing how basically the real life story about how this guy pretended to be part of the KKK to take down the KKK. Great performances by Topher Grace and Adam Driver, and just a lot of fun stuff in this movie, which I quite enjoy. And it has good messages too. Then we have Black Panther. We got Blade Runner, The Final Cut, and we have Blade Runner 2049. Funny enough, I don't think I've actually seen this version of Blade Runner. I have seen the original theatrical cut back when this movie was set to come out with Decker's monologue in the beginning. And I have not seen Blade Runner 2049 since theaters, but I do remember really enjoying both these movies for what they are. I do plan on rewatching them when Dune comes out, just I want to rewatch all of Villeneuve's filmography. But they're great sci-fi movies. Then we have Bloodline, a very, very underrated horror film, which I will cover on the channel probably around October, so stay tuned for that. This basically revolves around Sean William Scott playing, he's basically Dexter if he was a guidance counselor. He's this guidance counselor at school who has this lust to kill, and he'll kill abusive parents that he hears about from other students and such, while he's also being a expecting father on the way. And it's a very introspective film focusing on the psyche of a serial killer, and probably Sean William Scott's best performance. And I wish he does a lot more stuff in the future that isn't Stifler. Then we have Blue Velvets, a very, very odd movie by David Lynch, which is not saying much, but one of the first ones I watched of his, I got this on Criterion for Christmas a couple years ago, and is definitely odd. Has a lot of weird stuff in it. You got Dennis Hopper, breathing in a mask and going, "Mommy, mommy." Very interesting movie. Then we have Boogie Nights, one of my favorite films of all time. My second favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. Fantastic cast. Love the soundtrack to this. Love the soundtrack to this. Great direction by Paul Thomas Anderson. Great writing, I think, by him also. Yes, he also wrote this. Great casting. Mark Wahlberg, Burt Reynolds, Heather Graham, John C. Reilly, Philip Seymour Hoffman. Is John C. Reilly in this? Yeah, he is. William H. Macy, just fantastic cast. If you have not checked out yet, you definitely should. Then we have Booksmart. This is kind of the breakout movie of the summer that came out a few years ago, and I watched it in theaters. Haven't seen it since theaters, but I do really enjoy it. That's why I own it on Blu-ray. Great cast, great directorial debut from Olivia Wilde. Just solid performances, really good cast. Has great messages about exploring your sexuality and expecting, not what is it? accepting for who you really are and not, trying to appease anyone else. Not the biggest messages of the world, not the most original film in the world, but definitely enjoyable movie. I've been saying that a lot, but, when you kind of go off the cuff, you tend to repeat a lot of the same vocabulary. Then we have the Boondock Saints. Did not watch this until this year, and I quite enjoy it. I really love the chemistry between, Norman Reedus and, what's the other one? Sean Patrick Flannery. Forgot his name for a second. The guy from Dexter Season 8 and saw the final chapter. Great performances. Really enjoyed this movie, especially for Willem Dafoe alone. Willem Dafoe makes this movie for how good it is. Really good direction from Troy Duffy. Love the way the camera moves in certain scenes, like whenever they're in the strip club and they're getting tied up and stuff. Very, very interesting stuff during this movie. Not like a lot of action films that you see, and the chemistry between the two brothers is what really does make this movie, along with Willem Dafoe acting crazy. Then we have the Bourne Ultimate Collection, or the Classified Collection, excuse me. This contains all 5 movies. Well, this set technically only contains 4 of them, but when this box set came out, it did reserve a slot for Jason Bourne, because it came out June 2016, so yeah, right before Jason Bourne came out. And I had this set along with the individual case for Jason Bourne, but I decided to save up space and just put the 5th Bourne movie inside this set. So all 5 Bourne movies are inside here, and I enjoyed the series. I have not really rewatched them since Jason Bourne came out 5 years ago. I tried rewatching The Bourne Identity a few months ago, and I just kind of fell asleep and kind of lost interest, which I don't normally do, but, sometimes it happens. But, good movie, good series overall. I do enjoy the first 3 movies more than the other 2 that came out afterwards. And, I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of spy stuff or espionage movies, but it's a good series. Then we have Bravehearts. One of those classic, huge, epic scale war movies that just works because of how interesting and just how manly it is. It's so epic in how it tells a story and just how wide scale and how huge it is, and especially Mel Gibson's performance. And did he also direct this movie? He also did direct this movie. Great performances, great action, and just does not shy away from the gore whatsoever, and just very entertaining movie. Then we had The Breakfast Club, one of the classic John Hughes movies that is just still timeless even over 30... No, is it 30 years later? Yes. 35 years... Over 35 years later, it still works. Just simple story about these 5 teenagers that are stuck in Saturday school and basically just tend to learn each other and tend to learn about each other throughout the day and go through their emotions and just a lot of interesting stuff that just goes through this movie, and it's mainly because of John Hughes' writing. And did he also direct this movie? Yes, he did. Just the way that the film just introduces us to these characters and all the different dynamics and how different all of them are, and just how the layers get peeled back through who these characters actually are in the film. Very, very entertaining movie. Then we have Bridesmaids, probably the breakout film for a lot of these actresses, and Paul Feig as a comedy director. Really enjoyed this movie. Definitely not for me, but I found some very enjoyable stuff in the film, and just a lot of disgusting stuff, quite frankly. But I'm a raunch guy. I like raunchy stuff, and it went down my alleyway. Then we have The Butterfly Effect. Big fan of time travel movies, and this is no exception. Watched this for the first time last year, around a year ago, and yeah, very, very dark movie, but has a lot of great concepts about, you have Ashton Kutcher playing a guy who's kind of down on his luck in the future, and he goes back to read his old notes from when he was a kid, and somehow is able to go back and revisit those memories, and decides, I want to change stuff up, and then he ends up just really screwing up his own timeline and wanting to go back, and is very, very dark. I watched Director's Cut, which has a very different ending, but either version you watch, I think, is very entertaining. Ashton Kutcher's best performance to date. And yeah, very, very good movie. Then we have Candyman. Don't say his name 5 times. I actually rewatched this last night, actually, in preparation for the requel that's coming out next week or in a few days as the time's recording. Whenever you watch this, it's probably already come out, but I wanted to rewatch the original just because I remember watching all 3 films, binging them a couple Halloweens ago, and liking the first Candyman is definitely the best out of the 3, which is not saying much, but I remember liking it, but not loving it on the level a lot of people do. And although I will say I still don't think it's a great film, I enjoyed it significantly more on second reviewing, just because you tend to pick up on a lot more aspects, and the expectation of this film, going into this film, I thought would be like a hardcore slasher, and it's very much not. Only like 3 to 4 people die in this film. It's very much a psychological thriller focusing on, you know, a woman's obsession about this urban legend, and then it affects those around her, and her life spirals into madness because of Tony Todd and his incredible performance as the Candyman himself. Brilliant movie in a lot of aspects, but I do think it has some issues. But very enjoyable, and I can't wait to see what Nia DaCosta does with the sequel. Then we have the Captain America trilogy. We got the First Avenger, we got the Winter Soldier, and we have Civil War. And then we have Captain Marvel, everyone's favorite MCU film. Put that right there. Then we have Cars, the first Cars movie. I own this one. I owned Cars 3, but I decided to give it away just because, I don't like loose sequels in my lineup, and I refuse to own Cars 2 because that movie sucks. It's still the worst Pixar film in my opinion. But the first film, a lot of people shit on it, and I understand why. It was pretty much just made to sell toys in a lot of aspects, but because I grew up with this movie, and I remember rewatching on Disney Channel, and, you know, and car rides when, you know, minivans had DVD players, and my mom would, like, put the DVD in, like, this little screen on the top, and just, I have a lot of good memories just watching this film over and over and over again, and it's still nostalgic for me. Great animation as always from Pixar, and it still holds up fairly well today. Saw performances from Owen Wilson, and, you know, amongst the cast like Larry the Cable Guy, and just a lot of good stuff in this film. I understand if you don't like it, but I just find some very good enjoyment in this movie. Then we have Castaway, Wilson. One of the great survival movies of our modern times. Tom Hanks, fantastic lead role, and he basically carries this movie because it's basically just mostly him on his shoulders, stuck on this island, and it's just very emotional and just shows how someone in modern society kind of just breaks down, having to go back to just the primal instincts of man. Then we have Central Intelligence. This is one of the Kevin Hart rock movies that kind of, you know, really blew up around 5-6 years ago, and I saw it in theaters. Haven't seen it since theaters. I picked it up fairly after the movie came out on Blu-ray, and I remember liking it. I remember having a good time. I remember, like, Aaron Paul showed up as a villain for like 5 seconds in the last 5 minutes, but the chemistry between Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart worked very well. They have good chemistry, and I mean, it's an entertaining movie. Then we have the original Children of the Corn and this Arrow release, which I really like. And it's definitely the best out of the Children of the Corn franchise, which I've never understood why this installment, this series has so many damn sequels. I mean, there's even like a new one that's set to come out this year, which was shot during COVID last year, and it's still not came out on a wide release, but it was released in Florida for some reason. But going back to the original film, this definitely has a lot of great aspects which made the short story work. Great performances. A lot of ways. I really like the actor who plays Isaac and Malachi, and Linda Hamilton's also in this movie. I think around the same time that Terminator came out. But just a very creepy atmosphere. Really like the score. Really like the setting of Nebraska and just this empty cornfield and just all this like creepy atmosphere of these like just kids without parents, and there's very effective film in a lot of ways, but definitely has some cheeseball to it, especially in the last 5 minutes. It's crappy special effects. Then we have Chronicle, probably my favorite non-horror found footage film of all time. Probably my favorite found footage film in general. Great story about these 3 teenagers that get stuck, or they find this magic hole in the ground in Seattle, and they get these superpowers, and then one of them becomes insane, and basically just turns on the other 2. And it's a very good dramatic thriller, which has a good atmosphere to it, great soundtrack, really good special effects for the time, and still hold up very well today. And just, you know, Michael B. Jordan, Dane DeHaan, and I forgot who's the other guys, like Alex Russell. All 3 of them really feel like genuine friends, and they all like grow such a bond to when stuff starts going wrong, you generally feel bad for them. And Josh Trank does such a good job in this film that it sucks the fact that he hasn't done anything good since. And the sequel is set to come out, which was just announced at the time of recording, but the fact they're not continuing on the sequel bait, which this film literally ended off on, disappoints me. But for his first film, still love it. Then we have Climax. This is the first one I watched from Gaspar Noé. Watched this around a year ago, building up to Halloween, and this is an anxiety-induced nightmare. This movie is insane. It is just not shy away from the like just the most disgusting aspects of humanity whenever you're in this state of just you don't know what's going on. Great atmosphere, fantastic soundtrack. EDM is just brilliantly used in this movie. Love the color scheme of this film. The directing just keeps you on edge for the entire runtime. Unforgettable movie. Then we have Clyde with a Chance of Meatballs. It's probably like the oldest Blu-ray of my entire collection. Got this like back when it came out, probably just for the DVD before we actually got a Blu-ray player, or my Xbox, I should say. Fun movie by Sony Animation. Good modern retelling of the classic story, which I think brought a lot of good aspects to it. Very good voice cast, has a lot of good elements to it. I like the sequel, not as good, but this film still works very well. Good story, good messages, good themes. Fun movie. Alright, next up we have the Cloverfield movies, or at least the first two. So we got Cloverfield on 4K, recently just picked this up. A really fun found footage monster movie, really cryptic marketing, which I thought was genius. Really solid cast, really fun scares, solid movie. And then 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I think is the best of the Cloverfield series. I think is a massive improvement over the first film. Saw some theaters with my dad, and was a very intense experience, especially for a 7th grader. Just great performances from a great cast. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, John Gallagher Jr., and John Goodman, all fantastic. John Goodman was a great villain. You can definitely tell this was a separate script that was transformed into a Cloverfield movie at last second, but I thought it was great. You know, what was it? It had a great, what's the word? Potential for solid universe, and what we got of Cloverfield Paradox kind of destroyed all of that, but for these two films I enjoyed it. Then we have Coco, you know, one of the few original Pixar films that were successful in the 2010s when Pixar was just focused on sequels for the past, in that decade. And really solid movie. I saw it in theaters, saw it once more in Spanish class, and I enjoyed it both times. Great music, solid animation, as always from Pixar, great voice acting, just a very enjoyable movie with a great message about family, and you shouldn't forget your ties to it. And then lastly, for my second stack, we got Color Out of Space, one of the later Nicolas Cage weird indie movies that he does, and I have not seen it yet. Alright, next we got this third stack of Blu-rays, so getting right into it, we got the Conjuring Collection. This basically contains every single Conjuring universe movie minus La Llorona and the most recent Conjuring film, Devil Made Me Do It. And I got this for my birthday from my mom. I actually asked for the first Conjuring film just because I own the second one individually, and I ended up getting this, which I might replace with the 3-pack because the third Conjuring film is set to come out I think actually in a couple of days it's set to come out. Because really, apart from Annabelle Creation, I really only enjoy the Conjuring mainline films in the universe. I feel like the rest of them, mainly like the other two Annabelle movies, The Nun, La Llorona, I just feel like a lot of the spin-offs just try to copy James Wan and do not much else. But at least the mainline Conjuring films are interesting about, the Warrens, despite the fact they were real-life scumbags. Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson do a great job making them actually likable. Then we have this 3-pack of the first two Crank films, or the only two Crank films with Jason Statham, and for some reason Transporter 3, because they wanted another sequel in there. For the first two Crank films, I really enjoyed the first Crank. I think it's the best out of the two, just because I think it has the most fun, just being insane and just being crazy enough to where you can have a good time with it. And Crank 2, it tries to up the ante, and although it has a lot of fun moments, especially like whenever it goes into like live action and you have like a Jason Statham head crashing into buildings like a kaiju, but it does get a little too weird for me to where it's not really as rewatchable as the first one. And Transporter 3, I have not seen in like 6 or 7 years, ever since that new reboot with Ed Skrein came out, Transporter Refueled. That's when I binged all these movies. I don't really remember this movie at all, with the exception of the song, set it on fire, fire. That's really the only thing I remember about Transporter 3. Then we have Crawl. It's my last C. No, it's not my last C. So we have Crawl. This is the Alexander Aja horror thriller that came out a couple years ago. I remember seeing this the day before my 17th birthday, and I was the only one that saw this in theaters. I remember I had to run to my car because, much like this movie, there was a gigantic storm that came by the theater while this movie was playing, and yeah, I got covered in rain. But for this movie, I really enjoyed it. I like Kaya Scandalorio, I think that's pronounced her name. She is really good at the lead. I enjoyed the thrills it's had. It was just a fun movie. I had a good time with it. And I think I put this out of order, but let me see if I can do this. Next up, we have Crazy Rich Asians, which is kind of like the breakout hit of 2018. This is by John M. Chu, who also did Now You See Me Too, which I also almost will talk about later. And he also did In the Heights recently, which I haven't seen yet, but I heard a lot of good things about. I've not seen this in theaters, but I do remember having a really good time with it. I really like Henry Golding, and who's the other woman? Constance Wu. Very good romance on screen, a lot of fun. This is just a lighthearted, good time movie, which I had a pleasant time within the theater. Then we have The Crow, one of the classic 90s grunge comic book movies, which, of course, is probably known for the tragic end of Brandon Lee on set. But I watched it for the first time last year during the pandemic, and I had a really good time with it. Definitely is a product of its time, but I think it has a cool style and a clear reminiscence to it, where it oozes the comic book atmosphere to life. And it's just, although I haven't read the comics, it very much feels like they didn't really change much about the source material. And then we have, getting into the D's, we have the director's cut of Daredevil with Ben Affleck. And we have the Dark Knight trilogy, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Then we have The Dark Tower, extremely underrated movie. I really enjoyed this one. I understand for fans of the book why they don't like it, but I have a complete blast with this movie. I saw it in theaters right before I entered high school 4 years ago, and I still really enjoyed it. I've seen it multiple times since. And I just have a good time with it. I haven't read the books, so I don't know how accurate it is to the novels, but I really like Idris Elba as an action star. I really enjoyed him recently as Bloodsport in the Suicide Squad, and he just has that presence of being a badass action star. I like Matthew McConaughey in his role. I like Idris Elba's relationship with the main kid, and just going through these different worlds and just exploring, the past of the gunslinger and all that. It was just a lot of fun for me. I wish we got a sequel to it, but it bombed. All right, next up, because I put these out of order. Crap. Alright, next up we have Dark Waters. This is the Mark Ruffalo-led biopic, basically chronicling the life of this attorney, basically exposing the dark underground of DuPont, and basically how this company was, this waste company was just disposing their chemicals in this water, this small town, I believe in Michigan, and it started out, and it just started affecting the town. The kids got bad teeth, and animals started dying, and basically it's chronicling over the course of decades as this one lawyer, this attorney, is trying to take down this giant corporation, and every obstacle in the way is just hitting him, and it just shows so much descent into how much their life can be obsessed with this one incident, and it's great. Then we have Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake. For me, I actually like it more than the original. I know, a controversial statement, but I have a really good time with this. I think until the Snyder cut of Justice League, I thought this was my favorite Zack Snyder film up until this point. Personally, I just have a lot of good fun with it. The cast is great, the action's insane. This is written by James Gunn, you can definitely tell. The film's a lot of fun, still retains a lot of the elements that made the original work, and I don't know, I have a good time with it. Definitely a better zombie movie for Zack Snyder than Army of the Dead, I will say that. Then we have Dazed and Confused, one of the classic Linklater movies that basically just shows all these iconic stars on the cusp of them becoming gigantic celebrities. Matthew McConaughey, Ben Affleck, Mila Jovovich, Parker Posey, just so many great actors in this film, just having a good time, basically revolving these teenagers in the 70s, once school gets out, and just chronicling their lives over the course of the day. And I love movies like that can just go into someone's life for just a single day and just going through these random sequence of events. And sometimes it doesn't work, but for Linklater style, he just knows the right characters and teenagers specifically, and it's just a lot of fun. Then we have Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2. Then we have Deepwater Horizon, the first of the three films in the Mark Wahlberg, Peter Berg True Story trilogy, as I like to call it. I own all three of them. We'll talk about them later as we get to them. But alphabetically, just the first one. This is the second film that came out of that trilogy in fall 2016, nearly 5 years ago. I saw this in theaters, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite films that came out that year. And because, I don't know, it was a very interesting story about, the disaster in the 2010 oil rig in New Mexico, I believe. Just showing chronicling the lives of all these oil workers just in chaos as those oil rig is just going up in flames. Great cast, great emotions, really tense, and just very, very, it keeps you on the edge of your seat, very atmospheric, really solid score, great directing from Peter Berg, and just overall just a really solid movie. Then we have The Departed. Probably my favorite 21st century Martin Scorsese movie. It's absolutely packed to the brim with fantastic performances, solid dialogue, always taking you on left turns and just not, taking you in directions that you didn't expect, and just great underground mob stuff that Scorsese just, he's the guy that does this stuff the best. And overall, just fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, Departed, check it out, man. Jeez. And then, ooh, what's next? I'm trying to find it. Okay. Then we have, I'm pretty sure this is the next one. All right, next up we have Detroit, another very underrated film from Catherine Bigelow. This is her third true story movie that she also did. This is a movie that I saw in theaters almost 4 years ago with my dad as I entered freshman year of my high school career, and it is a film that is definitely brutal, definitely hard to watch in a lot of moments, powerful in a lot of moments, and it sucks that the film just didn't do well and didn't get any awards recognition. I would love to cover this on an underrated film someday, just because it's just so intense, and I think just the performances are fantastic, especially Will Poulter as the main bad guy, the main cop. He's just bone-chilling in this film. The fact that he hasn't done really much anything like it since disappoints me. It's just a fantastic movie. Then we have Die Hard, my favorite film of all time, absolutely masterpiece, classic of all time, of action genre. It's the shit. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Then we have also this Die Hard collection. It's the only film that I own multiple times intentionally because I love this film so much. So the Die Hard collection contains all 5 movies, or as I like to call it, just the 4 films, and the other one that we don't discuss. Pretty much love all these movies, the first 4 at least, and just absolutely classic series. Second one's solid, definitely copies out the first one. Third's my favorite sequel, and 4 is also pretty solid as well. Then we have The Disaster Artist, which is a really good biopic, probably like the last hurrah from James Franco before he got canceled, and pretty much a story about how Tommy Wiseau made The Room, so called the worst film of all time, or the best bad movie, if you like to call it that as well. Solid biopic. I like the fact that it takes on a different story and chronicles the life of Tommy Wiseau and just how odd he really was on sets. Then we have District 9, the film that basically made Neil Blomkamp a household name. Absolute surprise, and I think this is a great sci-fi movie. The fact that, they had such a low budget and they made it feel so realistic, blending practical and visual effects was just seamless damn near. Sharlto Copley as the main character was also great, and the fact that they're making a sequel right now, hopefully it goes through. I would love to see it. Then we had Disturbia, the 21st century spin on Rear Window, and I actually like it more than Rear Window. Again, I know, controversial opinion, but I found this at a Big Lots for like $5. I decided to watch it on a blind buy, and I really enjoyed it. Shia LaBeouf, really good performance as this guy who's basically on house arrest trying to find out if his neighbor's a serial killer, and it's very, very intense and a lot of fun. Then we have Django Unchained, my third favorite Tarantino movie of all time. Love this movie. It gets better every time I watch it. Jamie Foxx as the title character is fantastic. I love this banter with Christoph Waltz. Leo DiCaprio as the villain, probably my favorite performance of his of all time. Just fucking amazing stuff. And it's Samuel L. Jackson, classic. You let him sleep in the penthouse? Great stuff. All right, then we got trying to find what is okay. I think, yeah, okay. Then we have Do the Right Thing, the classic film by Spike Lee. Love this movie. I got it for Christmas a couple years ago, and I just think it's sadly still a movie that very much holds up today, and not much has changed in the past 30 years or so since it came out. But it tells a very important story about like this neighborhood in New York that just, they have different cultures, and they're just all going at each other's throats over the course of the movie as just stuff starts going wrong, and it's just a lot of important stuff in this movie. And once again, Samuel L. Jackson kills it in this movie. Calm down! Y'all need to chill. Great movie. Then we have Donnie Darko on Arrow Video. Sorry, I'm getting my publishers mixed up. Donnie Darko, one of my favorite time travel movies of all time, one of my favorite films of all time, one of my favorite performances by Jake Gyllenhaal of all time, just brilliance. Love it. Then we have Dodgeball. This is the underground comedy, kind of like the smash hit from Vince Vaughn and Ben Stiller, kind of part of the Rat Pack, or the modern day Rat Pack, I should say. But really fun movie. picked up of Target as a blind buy, watched it, had a good time with it. Then we have these 3 Doctor movies, as I like to call them. We got, let's see, Doctor Sleep. Absolute surprise. I did not expect anything from this film. The trailer really didn't give much away, and I love that because this film is a lot better than you expect. As a sequel to The Shining, I think that it handles the best way it possibly could. Matt Flanagan as a director, and I also think the writer too. Did he also write this? Yes, he also did write this. He does a great job of just blending what people liked about the film and also the book, and I think it blended it well, immensely well. I love Ewan McGregor as older Danny Torrance. Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat is a fantastic villain, and her band of misfits get a lot of screen time. Danny's relationship with the main girl is also great as well. It's just I love this movie, and I need to watch it more often. Then we have Doctor Strange. And we have Doctor Strange Love in 4K. Classic Kubrick movie, still holds up today, damn near, was it 50, 60 years later. Terrifying concept still brought to life, and just brilliant stuff. Alright, next up, ooh, there we go. Next up, we got Don't Breathe, but I actually just rewatched like a week ago because the sequel just came out, and the sequel was okay, but has nothing on this movie. This is a great concept brought to life. As in terms of like a horror film where you had to stay silent and that's mainly the tension, I think this is better than A Quiet Place. I know, controversial. The great performances mainly between Jane Levy, Stephen Lang, and Dylan Minnette, I think is really well done. The tension is very much well built, and there's not really a whole lot of plot holes which take me out of the movie. And the film's very intense, very scary, keeps you on the edge of your seat. Just a very, very fun movie. Then we have Drag Me to Hell, probably the last huge film that Sam Raimi did that was critically praised before, you know, he came back to do Doctor Strange, which I'm very hopeful that will be great. But for this film, a lot of fun, has a lot of the same aspects that made the Evil Dead trilogy work so well, because it's just so goofy and so out there and just so odd and crazy that you just can't help but have a good time with it. Then we have Dragged Across Concrete, the third film by S. Craig Zahler. He also did Bone Tomahawk and Brawl in Cell Block 99, which are also both great movies, and this film still contains that streak for him. Really solid underground cop thriller about these 2 cops on a suspension that try to get to this underground hit so they can get some money so they can score for their families. Great stuff, really intense. Then we have Dread. The 2012 version, which I think is a lot better than the Sylvester Stallone film from the 90s, and it's a shame that the film did not do well at the box office, and I hope we do get a sequel someday. Carl Urban is amazing in the title character. Lena Headey as Mama is also great as a villain, and just like the whole slow-mo drug effects I think are also very much well done. The action is great, the film's gory, and it gives you what you want from a Dread movie. Then we have David Lynch's Dune, which is a film that I think is a lot better than people give it credit for. Granted, I have not read the books, once again, so I'm not very knowledgeable on the source material, but I have a really good time with this movie. Again, David Lynch doing a huge blockbuster scale film like this you can only see it once here, and I think he does the best job he possibly could in his own style. It's fun, has a lot of good performances, is crazy 80s cheese, and it's just a lot of fun, but I cannot wait to see what Denis Villeneuve does with the story. Then we have Dunkirk, which is, there are 2 types of people in this world, people who prefer Dunkirk and people who prefer 1917. I prefer 1917. This is still a great movie, though. Christopher Nolan knows how to bring the war experience to life. Saw this in theaters, still great performances here, great action. It's not really character-based, but it doesn't really need to be. It's more or less focused on the experience, and I think Christopher Nolan handles it the best way he possibly could. Great stuff. What's next? I'm trying to see. Are we in the E's now? I think we are in the E's. Sorry, I really mismatched these Blu-rays. I'm pretty solid. Got this right. There we go. This will be really awkward in editing. Alright, then we have Easy A. This is a pretty solid new rendition on the Scarlet Letter. Emma Stone, who was already kind of like a breakout hit from Superbad. This is kind of the film that really cemented her as the next A-list actress, and she just does wonders in this film. Extremely entertaining, has a lot of good performances, really solid story, good messages, and just, I don't know, really, really fun movie. And then, what is next? Then we have End of Watch, which is just one of my favorite found footage films. like Chronicle that aren't horror related. Great chemistry between Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena. Basically about these two cops in LA, I believe, that, you know, basically Jake Gyllenhaal documents his life as a cop, and the stuff that these two go through is very intense, very emotional, and just a lot of stuff that I think does really well. Probably my favorite David Ayer movie. And then we have, what's next? Then we have Edge of Tomorrow, or Live, Die, Repeat, or whatever you want to call it. I call it Edge of Tomorrow. I really enjoyed time loop movies, and this one is no exception. Really intense, a lot of fun. The chemistry between Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt is off the charts. And like Chronicle and like Dread, please give us a sequel, because I would love to see it. Then we have Elf, one of the go-to Christmas films in my opinion. Very entertaining. Will Ferrell probably his best performance in my opinion as Buddy the Elf. His chemistry with James Caan as his father is a lot of fun also as well. It's just a fun, lighthearted movie that, you know, will always put you in the holiday spirits. Then we have Elysium, which is the second film by Neil Blomkamp, which a lot of people don't really like, but I actually quite enjoy. Basically revolving on like Matt Damon putting on his exoskeleton to try and take down the rich, who are basically like in this space station, who have this perfect life, get perfect health insurance and all this stuff, while all the poor people down here on Earth, you know, basically just don't get anything. Very intense movie and a lot of you know, interesting messages. Let's see. I'm trying to organize these, and then see if I can get it. Okay, then we get Enter the Void. This film is fucking insane. Watch it now. Please, watch it. Then we have Eraserhead, another very, very wild, insane film by David Lynch. It's actually his first film, and you can tell there was some spark of greatness in him from the start. Insane film. The black and white aesthetic of this movie actually does holds the cold atmosphere and the cold tone the film attains. Just following this guy who gets a girl pregnant, and she gives birth to like this weird monster, like, you know, thing. And there's also this, like, he has fever dreams. There's like this one girl with huge cheeks and this dress that keeps dancing, and just it. You gotta see it for yourself to understand what I'm talking about. And I don't want to knock this over. Okay, there we go. Alright, next up we have Escape from New York, another John Carpenter movie, which I do like, but I don't love. I feel like, I don't know, I think I watched two other movies similar to it, to where when I got to this film a few years ago, I was like, oh, I enjoy it, but I don't love it on the level people do. Then we have E.T., classic by Spielberg, of course, just one of those essential 80s movies which everyone loves. Great movie. I don't consider it among my favorites of all time because, again, similar to Back to the Future, is one of those movies to where everybody references it, and I don't really feel the need to go back to it, but regardless, it's still a revolutionary movie. Then we have Event Horizon, a very interesting film by Paul W.S. Anderson, which I think is probably his best movie to date, along with the original Mortal Kombat movie, back when he just didn't do Resident Evil movies with his wife. But, solid sci-fi horror concept, which I think was brutally murdered by Paramount, like, you know, screwing this movie over in post-production because of bad test screenings. And I do hope we do get the eventual original version of this film someday, or at least get a remake that kind of like captures what made the original cut so good. But for this version, it's still a fun movie, but, you know, has some missed potential in there. And then last, for my third stack, we have the Evil Dead trilogy. Solid amount of good horror films, and I also own the remake on DVD, just haven't converted it yet to Blu-ray. But as for these three films, it was what made Sam Raimi, you know. It's the film that made him, it's the trilogy that made him the guy he is today. You know, the original Evil Dead has a lot of cheese to it, but I still think it's very effective. It's still one of my favorite horror films of all time, just because it's so influential of how these guys made basically this film on nothing, and they still made a great, fun horror movie out of it. Evil Dead 2, I think is my favorite of the Evil Dead movies. It's insane, it's wild, it's crazy, but I think it takes what worked about the first film and just only amplifies it more. And then Army of Darkness is my least favorite out of the three. It's still a decent flick, but I don't think it's nearly as good as the first two, just because it feels very out of place in my opinion, but it's still very enjoyable. Alright, next up we got stack number 4 right here. Starting off the bat, we got Ex Machina in 4K. This is by Alex Garland, the same guy we talked about with Annihilation. Fantastic sci-fi horror thriller that could very much happen in real life in a few years from now. Basically, revolving around Alicia Vikander, who I believe is like the breakout role for her as this android made by Oscar Isaac that slowly starts to go insane after, she starts to have a romantic relationship and stuff starts going very, very wrong. Very, very introspective movie, which I highly recommend. Then we have the original Exorcist, which is one of the best horror films of all time, absolute classic. A film that I was not allowed to watch until I was very old because my mom was scarred by this movie when she was 5 because of a bad babysitter. And I understand because this film was definitely, I watched it when I already seen so many other horror classics where, it didn't startle me to the core, but there's a lot of creepy stuff in here that definitely cements itself in being a classic in the horror genre. And then we have the very, very underrated Exorcist 3, which I did cover on my channel last Halloween, which you should definitely check out. Without the best Exorcist sequel or any follow-up to The Exorcist since, the original I actually think is better than the original Exorcist. I know, once again, very controversial, but does a great job at being completely different to the original, but also very much feeling like a continuation of the story with the characters. Great performances from Brad Dourif and George C. Scott and all the other actors in this film. Has the best jump scare in any horror film of all time. Great atmosphere. Great direction from William Peter Blatty, which this is sadly the last one he ever directed because of the studio meddling, which I do understand why, because I think the director's cut is kind of worse than the theatrical cut just because of the way the film wraps up, which I won't spoil, but really great movie. And the fact that David Gordon Green is gonna retcon it kind of disappoints me, but we'll see what he does with this new trilogy. Then we have Fantastic Planets get into the F's in Criterion. Without that, one of the weirdest films in my collection. Basically revolving around these blue alien people on their planet that basically take humans as slaves. Almost, they're basically their servants. And it's odd. It's animated from the 70s, and it's French, and you can definitely tell because it's definitely foreign to a lot of American viewers, and it's definitely out there. It's definitely out there. But I give it my highest recommendation because it's definitely something worth checking out. And then we have Fargo by the Coen brothers. Odd little thriller about this murder in, what is it, Minnesota? Yes, it was Minnesota. Odd performances, good movie. I haven't seen the FX series yet, but this film made me want to check it out. And then we have, then we have the entire Fast saga up until this point. So getting to all 9 of these movies, and this does not include F9 because it hasn't come out on Blu-ray yet, and nor do I want to buy it because it sucked. But the original Fast and Furious, solid start to the universe, but very minuscule in retrospect. Too Fast, Too Furious, enjoyable movie, but prior to F9, this was my least favorite in the entire saga because it was just so odd, and it didn't get to the point yet where it felt ridiculously, like, they still try to be cool, as in terms of being with the street racing, but it felt very odd. Then we had Tokyo Drift, very underrated film in my opinion, probably my 3rd favorite Fast and Furious movie. Really enjoy the characters in this one, and this is Justin Lin's first movie. Then we have Fast and Furious, enjoyable movie, but I think it's probably the most forgettable one in the entire franchise. Then we have Fast 5, my favorite of the entire franchise. Absolutely love the heist aesthetic to it, the high point of the entire series. Then we have Fast and Furious 6, solid continuation of Fast 5, but doesn't really reach the heights of it, but still very enjoyable. Then we have Furious 7, my 2nd favorite Fast and Furious movie. This is where the series should have ended. A great tribute to Paul Walker. Still very fun action scenes. Really like Jason Statham as Deckard Shaw. Or no, Owen Shaw. No, yeah, it's Deckard Shaw. A lot of fun stuff, but yeah, this should have been the final chapter. And then we get to Fate of the Furious. Solid film still, but definitely stretches reality and possibility, and it's where the series, you can tell the limits are being stretched with how far they can go. And then we get to Hobbs and Shaw, which is enjoyable, but once again, like the Fate of the Furious, just feels very much like a cartoon, and it didn't help that F9 very much just blew that out of the water. But I enjoy all those films. I just don't know if I really want to keep F8 or Hobbs and Shaw. I might just keep the first 7 and just end the series canonically at 7. But for what it is, I have fun with it. I understand if it's not people's thing, but I have a good time with it. Then we have Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Very fun 80s comedy, which is a lot better than I thought it would be. But a lot of fun stuff in this film. My favorite performance from Sean Penn. as this stoner you see on the cover. John Reinhold in this movie is a lot of fun as like the gas station clerk. Just a lot of fun sequences in this film, which I had a good time with. Then we have this freaking Barnes & Noble. Can you please stop putting like stickers on the packaging so it doesn't stick on my Blu-rays? We get The Favorites. This is the latest film by Yorgos Lanthimos, which is a very, very strange director. But this film was a lot of fun. Saw it in theaters with my dad, who did not understand the film whatsoever. But this is a really good dry comedy. Great performances all around. Olivia Colman definitely deserved the Oscar. Just the way it's shot, the way it's just tells this very what's the story? Royal story in it's typical Yorgos Lanthimos fashion, where it's very, very strange and weird, but I have a good time with it. Then we have Fight Club, of course, David Fincher, probably my favorite film from him, if not my second or third favorite. Absolute classic. You know what it is. We can't talk about it. That's the first rule, right? And then we have The Fighter. Pretty solid movie. This came around the same time as Warrior, and I think they kind of blend to one another. Still really enjoyable movie, though. Probably the most memorable sequence in this film is when Christian Bale is relapsing on heroin. He has to jump out of the back of the house into this dumpster to escape his family. But pretty solid movie. And then we have the duology of Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. Both good movies, but the first film's definitely fantastic. It's the superior one of my favorite animated films of all time. Finding Dory, solid enough sequel, but definitely unnecessary in the long run. Then we have Ford v Ferrari, another awesome film with Christian Bale in it. Him and Matt Damon do great wonders, and the chemistry is great. James Mangold does a great job directing the race sequences in this film, along with the dialogue scenes, showing how Ford beat Ferrari for the first time, and it's just a lot of fun, a lot of good race car sequences, and yeah, good emotions too. Then we have Forrest Gump, one of the classic films of the 90s and classic Tom Hanks films. No need to say about it, and because it's already been talked about to death. But Forrest, he got screwed over so bad. Didn't hook up with Forrest until he got AIDS. What the hell? Then we got Foxcatcher, which is a very, very intense movie. Steve Carell definitely just going for this dark performance, and you can tell he knows how to range his performance and feels very, very sadistic in a lot of ways. Channing Tatum gives one of his darker performances too, especially the scene whenever he's like bashing his head into the mirror in the hotel room whenever he gets frustrated. Very intense stuff. Shows the darker side of wrestling and all just the crime and all just the dark side of humanity that you don't like to talk about. Then we have Friday. You got knocked the fuck out, man. One of the classic comedies of the 90s, which I think still holds up very well today. The sequels are fine. Mainly only the next Friday. I don't really care for Friday After Next. This is one of those comedies which I would like to see another one of, at least with the original cast. I know the actor who played Debo passed away a few months ago, but get Chris Tucker and Ice Cube back together because they were hilarious. Then we have some of the Friday the 13th films. I don't own every single Friday the 13th movie, but I do own this 8-pack of the 8 Paramount movies. Friday the 13th parts 1 through 8. I ranked these films around last summer, so if you want to check it out, you probably can on my channel. But quick rundown on my thoughts. First film, decent start, but not great. Part 2, improvement in my opinion, brings Jason to the fold, but not fully in some aspects. Part 3 pretty much brings the Jason back that we all know and love, and is a lot of fun. Part 4, my second favorite of the franchise. Part 5 is really goofy, and the unnecessary absence of Jason really hurts it, especially with the bad plot twist, which is just as confusing as the first one. Part 6, my favorite of the franchise. Part 7, fun enough, but the kills, or the lack thereof, really just drain the film, because that's what these movies are all built upon. And Part 8, I enjoy for some aspects. I don't hate it on a level a lot of people do, but it's a complete lie. Jason just takes a boat for 90 minutes. And then we have the Friday the 13th 2009 remake. I quite enjoyed this one. It's one of my favorites of the entire franchise. I don't know why people hate it so much. I think it does a lot of the same aspects that made all the other installments work. And I think Darren Mears is a pretty terrifying Jason. Hopefully we get another one at least in the next 50 years, if they can never get out of the courtrooms. And then we got the original Fright Night and Fright Night Part 2. Both very enjoyable movies. I really enjoy both. I don't know why people don't really respect Fright Night 2 that much, because I think it brings a lot of the same aspects that made the first film work. Love the characters of Charlie Brewster and Evil Ed and Roddy McDowell. forgot his character's name, and the main villain of the first film, Charlie Dandridge, great villain in my opinion. I think the second film also brings back a lot of the same aspects that made the first film work, especially with the entire cast coming back. I don't know, they're both very fun vampire movies. Then we have The Frighteners, the very last film, or at least the latest film that Peter Jackson's made that's been horror-related before he did off in Middle-earth. But really enjoyed this one. It's a film that I like to watch every single Halloween. Michael J. Fox, I think it was like his last major role before he decided to retire, or at least just before he started just doing Stuart Little, and then just didn't really come back and do live action stuff. But this is a very entertaining movie about Michael J. Fox is clairvoyant. He can talk to ghosts, and basically, he basically tells the ghosts to screw up their these people's lives so he can get money to supposedly expel them from the house. He's basically a con artist until stuff starts going wrong. Very entertaining movie. Then we have From Dusk Till Dawn, one of my favorite films of all time. I love this movie. It is insane. It is wild. It is crazy. It has some of the best dialogue of any Tarantino movie. Great performances all around from George Clooney in his breakout role, Harvey Keitel, Juliette Lewis, Quentin Tarantino, Selma Hayek, and one of the best sequences in any film of her just doing that strip dance, and amazing stuff. And the vampire action is just as great. Then we get The Fugitive, one of the classic action thrillers of the 90s, but with Harrison Ford the star, and also Tommy Lee Jones. Very fun movie. Very, very fun movie. Then we have Full Metal Jacket, one of the essential Kubrick movies, which I do like. I think it's pretty solid, but I think the first half is definitely better than the second half. I think it kind of teeters out after Vincent D'Onofrio leaves the movie, but still very, very much aspects on the effects on war and soldiers. Tackles it very well. Then we get into the G's with Galaxy Quest. Watched it for the first time, I believe, earlier this year around New Year's. A lot of fun. Great, kind of parodying on Star Trek, and kind of bringing this aspect of like all these washed up actors having to actually act like their characters and save the world from these alien invasion stuff going on. And it's just a lot of good stuff. Great cast from all around. Just solid practical effects and visual effects. Just a lot of fun. Then we have The Gentleman in 4K, Guy Ritchie's second latest movie, which he's kind of had a comeback. I wasn't a huge fan of the Aladdin remake, but it was a huge hit. This was a huge hit before the pandemic. Wrath of the Man, which we'll talk about in a little bit, was also a huge hit, and he's also has another film coming out next year. This guy's on a streak, and I can see why. I want to if it's on the level of this, I want to see it continue. Really fun movie, great Guy Ritchie dialogue, very much brings back that crime aesthetic that made Lock, Stock, and Snatch work so well. Great cast, great characters, fun dialogue, fast pace. It's what you want out of a Guy Ritchie movie. Then we get to Get Out, one of the most fun theater experiences of all time, in my opinion. I saw this the second weekend it came out in theaters on a Saturday night, which I don't usually do. I usually go see a film on like Thursday or Friday. But I saw one of my best friends back in 8th grade, the second weekend it came out, and I just had a complete blast. Like, the entire audience was just in sync with the movie. Whenever the characters would not act like themselves, they'd be like, "Oh no!" And the third act, whenever like you would see just insane stuff going, like whenever Danny Cluse, brings like the cotton out of his ears, everyone's like, "Oh my god!" Or like whenever like the at the end, whenever he well, I won't spoil the ending, but whenever you see police lights, everyone's like, "Oh my god!" And then when you see his friends show up, you're like, "Oh my god!" I don't know. Great experience, great film debut from Jordan Peele, great cast, and it's just a lot of fun with a really ingenious concept. Then we get to Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2. Enjoy both. The first film is definitely superior to the second film. Don't own the 2016 one just because I don't really enjoy that much, and I have the highest of hopes, hopefully, for Afterlife coming out this fall. Then we have Ghost World and Criterion Collection Edition. This is a film that I didn't watch until last year, and I did not know this was a comic book film. Definitely one of the strangest ones I've seen. Very indie, very odd. You see Scarlett Johansson in one of her earlier roles before she became big. Steve Buscemi is great as like this kind of like side character that constantly keeps hanging out with the main character. Great performances, great, talking about messagings and themes about growing apart from a friendship about after high school, and just all of this introspective stuff about just human relationships. I think a lot of other movies don't really tackle that much. Very interesting. And then we get The Gift. Very fucked up thriller, but it's very entertaining, very on the edge of your seat, and great directorial debut from Joel Edgerton, who also wrote the movie. Also does a great job in the main actor chair as being the main bad guy that you don't really suspect to be the bad guy, and how the film will show you what Jason Bateman's character is really like and what happened between the history of these two characters. I think is very entertaining and very, I don't know, it comes on a lot of different things that I think makes it a lot more worthwhile and more rewatchable. Then we get to The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. Both movies which I think are deserving of being, I understand all the praise they get as being some of the best mobster films, as some of the best films in general. Great movies, both of them, but they aren't my personal favorites of all time because they get talked about so much that for me, it's either really hard to rewatch them, nor is it really hard to get me invested or really have a personal relationship with these films when everybody and the mother talks about them. Still great films, great performances, but they're not really my thing. You know what I'm saying? Then we get to Godzilla 2014, the Gareth Edwards Godzilla, which I still think controversially is my favorite film of the MonsterVerse. It could have been a lot better if they actually showed Godzilla more than the final fight, but I still think like the way that Gareth Edwards directed this film of being basically like a bird's eye view of Godzilla from this huge scale, which I think the other MonsterVerse films have failed to actually replicate, I think is very well done. I love the score of this movie. I think the acting is pretty solid, especially with Bryan Cranston, but they just need to have more Godzilla film in the Godzilla movie. I don't know why they dictated you the entire time. Then we get to Gone Girl, one of my favorite films of all time, one of my favorite David Fincher movies. Disturbing as hell. Tells you the story about, don't mess up with the woman. Don't feel the woman's scorn. Screwed up movie. Great performances, great acting, great directing, great writing. I haven't read the original novel, but I tend to think if it's anything as good as this film, then it's definitely worth reading. And this is a film that's definitely worth watching. And then we get to the last film of my fourth stack is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, the third and final film of the Man with No Name trilogy. I've seen all three of them. I need to get the other two, but this film is definitely my favorite out of the three. I think this is the only great one in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of spaghetti westerns, but I do really enjoy the story of this film, basically about these three guys that are trying to find this gold and are basically holding each other at gunpoint the entire time. You don't know who's going to double cross who's going to live, who's going to die, and it's intense. It's enthralling in a lot of aspects, and it's very powerful in some spots too, especially with the score. Great movie. Okay, now we're going to get into my fifth stack right here. I tried removing it from the shelf like I do with the other shelves, but because it's connected to this mic stand, when I tried to remove all my Blu-rays, it kind of fell off and kind of screwed up my setup. So we're just going to do it from just the shelf right here. So starting off, we are late into the G's, so we got Good Boys to start out with. I understand a lot of people don't really like this movie that much, but I do have a lot of good memories with it. I saw it a couple years back with one of my best friends, and I had a really good night with him. We hung out at Big Lots, and we had a really good time watching this movie, and there's a lot of good memories associated with this. I'll just say that. Next up, we got Good Burger. I reviewed this movie a couple years back on my channel, way back in the relics, and I got this when it came out this year on Blu-ray, and it's still a really fun movie. It's goofy as hell. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's what makes it so much fun. Then we got Goodfellas. One of the classic gangster films of all time. It's in my top 10 of all time. I love this movie to death. It's classic. The performances are out of this world. Joe Pesci, Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro. Amazing performances. Fantastic direction. Perfect movie. Then we got The Goonies, one of the classic 80s films from late director Richard Donner. Classic adventure movie. Great characters. Fun setting. Hey, you guys. Classic lines. Just enjoyable, lighthearted movie. Then we have Goosebumps. This is a film that I usually like to watch every single October. This is kind of like the first horror-ish movie I watched, kind of like to ease into the tones of like the darker horror films, because this film is just so much fun. It brings the R.L. Stine books to life in a big budget way. Jack Black as R.L. Stine himself, I think, is very fun. Dylan Minnette and the other characters are a lot of fun, just trying to chase down all these stories that have escaped. And it's just a blast of a movie. Sad to say the sequel sucked, but I hope we get more good ones like it soon. Alright, then we got two Criterion movies back to back. First off, we have The Graduate. Watched it for the first time last year and had a complete blast with it. This movie definitely is an era of its time. And, you know, there's a lot of great performances in this movie. Dustin Hoffman, Catherine Ross, great stuff in here. Has one of the most, you know, memorable endings of all time because of how ambiguous it is. But it's a very fun story about this romance that kind of blossoms over the course of this summer and just how stuff starts to go awry. A lot of good movie. And then we got The Grand Budapest Hotel, another Criterion release, and the only Wes Anderson movie that I own on Blu-ray right now, which is kind of a shame because I really enjoyed this movie. Great performances. This is kind of my introduction to Tony Ravioli, the guy who plays Flash in the Spider-Man movies. Ray Fiennes is great as the title role. Of course, all the Wes Anderson, you know, mainstays: Tilda Swinton, Bill Murray, Adrian Brody, Owen Wilson, the whole gang's here, and it's just fantastic. Next up, we got The Great Escape. I have not seen this film yet. It's one of the few films in my collection I have not watched yet. Bought it for the first time last year, and I have yet to watch it just because I think because of the length. It's nearly 3 hours long, and because it's an older movie, it's not like now where it's like, oh, a 2 hour and 10-minute film, and there's like 10 minutes worth of credits. This is a full 3 hour movie, and it's an older film, and I've always wanted to watch it just because I hear how much praise this film gets and how every director in any team-up movie always cites this as a reference. It's just that I just haven't picked it up yet, or watched it yet, I should say. Then we got Green Book, the Best Picture winner that probably shouldn't have won Best Picture, but I mean, now it has. This is a pretty controversial movie because of a lot of people just think that it kind of undermines racism a little bit, and although I can understand their viewpoints, I find that this film is very, I think it's a lot more good than bad in my opinion. I think it makes it more so to where it's easier to watch and the themes flow through a lot faster than if they went, I don't know, if they went a lot darker in tone, in my opinion. I think that the main two performances of Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali are great together, and I think the film's just very fun. I saw it in theaters. I had a good time with it. It should have not won Best Picture, but I mean, I enjoy it. Then we have The Green Hornet, very underrated superhero comedy. I don't know why people just dislike this movie so much. It seems very forgotten about, and although I understand, like, in some aspects, like Christopher Waltz being wasted completely as the villain, and it's just one of those movies like Horrible Bosses 2, to where they just don't utilize his talents, and it's just a paycheck movie for him. But I really like the main two leads in Seth Rogen and Jay Chou, and their performances are just really fun. I enjoy the action scenes. I think it's a lot of good time, and I wish we got a franchise out of it, but alas. Then we have The Green Mile, one of the best Stephen King adaptations of all time. Frank Darabont, fresh off of Shawshank Redemption, came out with another fantastic drama. Great performances, great characters. Michael Clarke Duncan steals the show in this. Sam Rockwell playing one of the most despicable villains of all time. You hate him so much. Just fantastic movie. Will make you cry. Then we have Green Room. Rewatched this film actually a few months ago, just because the first time I watched this movie was back when it came out, and this movie, since it was R-rated and since I was really young, like I was in around 7th and 8th grade when this movie came out, and I wasn't allowed to watch it in theaters, and couldn't get it on Blu-ray, so I chose to watch it on like a shitty digital copy, which it was obvious that someone just recorded it in the theater, and like the audio and the video was just not matching up, and so the whole movie not only did it look terrible, but because I couldn't understand any of the dialogue, it kind of left me in a bad taste. Rewatching this in full HD helped out a lot better, and although it's still not a great movie in my opinion, very gory, very brutal in a lot of spots. Patrick Stewart's very great. I just think he gets underutilized in the film, but it's still a very solid movie. Then we have Grindhouse. This is the double feature that Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino did together, where they released 2 movies back to back, along with a bunch of interludes and commercials to kind of like pay homage to the Grindhouse stuff that they used to watch when they were little. So we got Planetary and Death Proof. Planetary I watched for the first time earlier this year, and it was pretty not that good in my opinion. And then we get Death Proof, which although I think is the better out of the 2 films, I will say it's still my least favorite Tarantino movie. It's just I don't really like the Grindhouse aesthetic that he goes for, and it just feels very much underneath him in my opinion. But it's still fun enough. I really like Kurt Russell as the stuntman Mike. Still very intense. Then we have Grudge Match, which is an okay enough comedy, bringing De Niro and Stallone together basically as a spiritual Rocky Balboa and what's his character from Raging Bull? Jack something, I forgot his name. But bring those 2 classic actors together in like a comedy fight where they can fight each other. decent enough comedy. The main reason why I own it is just because of the novelty of it, because I own all the Rocky movies, I own Raging Bull. Why not own kind of like the unofficial crossover? Decent comedy, but nothing special. Then we have Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Then we have Hacksaw Ridge, getting into the H's right here. Very great war movie by Mel Gibson. Andrew Garfield gives a great main performance. I love Vince Vaughn as the main Sarge in this movie. Great stuff in here. I will always remember this movie because it was the only time I ever vomited in the movie theater. Not because of the violence that was going on, because this film's very brutal. It was because the fact that it was served very shitty popcorn with like the liquid butter. I have yet to ever try liquid butter since, because whenever I ate that shit up, I had to run out of the movie theater and vomit in the bathroom. And yeah, not a fun experience, but movie great. The movie's great. Then we have some of the Halloween films. We got mainly the ones that I enjoy and ones that I will want to rewatch. Starting off with the original Halloween by John Carpenter. My favorite John Carpenter movie by a mile. I love this movie. I still rewatch it every Halloween. Atmospheric as hell. Just the perfect horror film in my opinion. Then we get Halloween 2, The More of the Night He Came Home. Very solid sequel, nowhere near as good as the first film, but I think it does a good job at wrapping up the story pretty well. Good performances, really good kills, but definitely feels like a Friday the 13th clone, which is kind of ironic because Friday the 13th ripped off Halloween. Then we get to Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Solid sequel, solid return to form for the franchise. I think that Daniel Harris as Jamie Lloyd really saves this movie in a lot of ways. The kills are really solid. The intensity of the film is very fun, and I really love the ending. It's just that there's a lot of dull characters in the mix, and I don't really like the mask that Michael Myers wears. Then we have Halloween H2O, 20 years later. Very solid conclusion to Laurie Strode's story, once again, similar to Halloween 2. I think it amps up the kills very well. Retains a lot of the atmosphere that made the original work so well, and I just think that the performances also from Jamie Lee Curtis and who's his son in the movie? Josh Hartnett. They're great. And then we have Halloween 2018. I've only watched it once in theaters. I haven't rewatched it since then. I will rewatch it before Halloween Kills comes out in a couple of months. But really solid return to form for the franchise once again. It goes for a lot of the same aspects that Halloween H2O went for. Good kills, great Michael Myers and James Jude Courtney, great acting for the most part, aside from a few weak performances like the dad and Judy Greer and like the boyfriend-ish. And like the friend tries to get to Laurie Strode's granddaughter. But overall, very fun movie. Can't wait to see how this trilogy wraps up with Halloween Kills and eventually Halloween Ends. And this is the first series I ever ranked on my channel, so I do have a lot of nostalgia towards this franchise. Then we have The Hangover. Recently we watched this film on TV with some of my family members when I was away on vacation, and it's still a fantastic movie. It's one of those movies that I try to watch every single year because I love this movie. It was the first R-rated film I ever watched. I remember one of my dad's friends came over like 10 or 12 years ago when I was like in 3rd grade, and this is on TBS, like a TV edit of the film, and my dad's friend let me watch it, and seeing a lot of stuff for the first time, like a lot of violence and nudity and a lot of stuff that a kid really wouldn't want to see or shouldn't have seen. I got to see it, and it left a lot of good memories. I don't know. Very fun movie still. Very simple concept brought to life by great actors. Really great writing. Really great directing by Todd Phillips. Great soundtrack that I love. Great pacing. It's funny through and through, and it's a film that should have only been a one-off. There should have never been sequels. I like Hangover 2 enough because it retains what I liked about the first one. Hangover 3 sucked though, but this film's definitely the best of the trilogy. Then we have the Harry Potter Complete Collection. This contains all 8 films in the main saga. This does not include Fantastic Beasts. Which is kind of ironic because I didn't really watch any of these movies until the last Fantastic Beasts film came out a couple years ago. And really rewatching these films, or really watching all these films for the first time, I understand why this was a phenomenon for a decade and still kind of is to this day. Great characters, great acting, really solid storytelling. Especially the last film, which really does end the series on a high note, in my opinion. Just a lot of great stuff. I'm not a huge fantasy guy, but the characters really what made this trilogy work for me. Or I'm sorry, this saga work for me. Then we have The Hateful Eight, the 8th film by Quentin Tarantino, and this is actually the first Tarantino film I actually watched in theaters. And I visibly remember this film just being such it just surprised me because I hadn't seen so many films like this when I was like in 7th grade when I got to see this, and it was definitely an impression. Still rewatching it right before I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Still a great movie. Very much like a stage play, and I think that's, if you haven't seen the film, that's what you should go in thinking about it. I have not watched the extended edition on Netflix, but I very much try to play for that tone from what I've heard. Great acting, great performances, great dialogue, fantastic gore, great tension and suspense. Keeps you, on your toes with a lot of great surprises that you don't see coming, and just a lot of enjoyable dialogue. It's what you want from a Tarantino movie. Then we have Heat, the classic Michael Mann heist movie starring Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, where they only shared one scene together. But apart from that, still a great, just tension-filled thriller that will just pound you into your core. That will it's so entertaining. And then we also have The Heat, another Paul Feig comedy starring Melissa McCarthy and Sandra Bullock. One I actually quite enjoy. I enjoyed most Paul Feig comedies besides Ghostbusters 2016, and I don't know, something about his directing style really does make Melissa McCarthy funnier than when she's directed by her husband, quite frankly. Then we have the first 2 Hellraiser films in the era releases, so Hellraiser and Hellbound Hellraiser 2. Definitely the best of the Hellraiser films, which isn't really saying a lot considering how bad this series is. But I do love the original Hellraiser. I think for the budget they had and for the ideas they had is just fantastically put together. Great small-scale horror film, fantastic score, fantastic performance from Doug Bradley as Pinhead, which was really one of the good things that remained throughout the entire franchise until it kind of cut off after Hellworld. And then Hellbound kind of retains a lot of what made the first film work. It's just that I think it does get a little too weird, and you can feel Clive Barker's absence in the directing chair. But still, very enjoyable movie, and yeah, cannot wait to see what the reboot's like. Hopefully it's better than at least 8 of the sequels. Then we get to Hereditary. This is probably the only film, in my opinion, for me thus far, that it's a film that I'm just too scared to rewatch. I own it on Blu-ray. I got it the Christmas of the year it came out, 2018. And I have yet to rewatch it since theaters. I saw it when I was 15, about to turn 16, and it is a film that still has fucked me up over 3 years later. It's a very powerful movie that really tackles a lot of emotional stuff that I have experience with, and the fact that it's much more than just a haunted house movie or a possession movie. It really sticks with me, and the performances are great. The atmosphere is fantastic. The score by Colin Stetson is just iconic and very, very unsettling in my opinion. The scares aren't all jump scares, but they really catch you by surprise and really affect you, in my opinion. The film just it's been burned into my mind, and it's a film that I just can't sit down and rewatch. Maybe someday, but right now, it's just staring at me right in the face, being like, watch it again. I can't. Hopefully Ari Aster pulls something more like this out of his hat in the future. Then we have the Hills of Eyes Unrated Collection. This basically just contains the 2 remake films of the series. I'm not a fan of the original line of Hills of Eyes movies, just because old Wes Craven pre-Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm not a huge fan of, like that or Last House on the Left. I prefer the remakes in my opinion. So the Alexandra Aja remake of Hills of Eyes, I think is the best Hills of Eyes movie. It's gory, it's unsettling, it's brutal, and just a great reinvention of what made the best aspects of the original that really weren't as potential back then. And then the Hills of Eyes 2, decent follow-up. Again, I still like it more than the original. Still some gory kills, unrelentless, but it definitely does feel generic in a lot of aspects. But still, I enjoy both of them. Then we have the Hobbit trilogy. This is the second half of the Middle-earth saga that Peter Jackson returned to direct all 3 of them. I binged all the Middle-earth movies around 2 or 3 summers ago, and none of them really have stuck with me that much. I will admit a lot of them are great films and great filmmaking aspects, and I understand why they're such a phenomenon even still. I like all these movies, but they don't speak to me that much, you know what I'm saying? I like the Hobbit movies. They're all 3 of them are pretty solid. I do like the Unexpected Journey the best because I got to see that with my grandpa in theaters. I like the other 2 pretty solid enough, but they're not fantastic movies in my opinion. I just kind of own it because it's a big franchise. And then we get Home Alone 1 and 2, classic movies in the Christmas genre, a film that basically defined an entire generation in the 90s. And I understand why it's so iconic. Even now, we're getting a reboot of it on Disney+. Just great performances by Macaulay Culkin and Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern, and just amazing cast all around. And then we get this horror 4-pack that contains the first 2 Hostel films and the 2 Hollow Man films. Concerning the Hostel movies first, it's not really a franchise I enjoy that much. Eli Roth is a very divisive filmmaker, and I'm just not really on his side that much, apart from The Sacrament. The Cabin Fever was, I didn't really care for that franchise. I did not like, what was it, Knock Knock? That was terrible. I do like his Death Race remake with Bruce Willis, and what was the one that he did with, I'm blanking on it right now. Was he part of the Innkeepers? I think it was a different director, but regardless, the first Hostel film I think is okay, but I think the characters are really terrible, and that's what really drags it down. Hostel 2 kind of fixes that, and I think it's definitely the best out of the 3 Hostel movies, but still has a lot of issues with it. And then the main reason why I got this set is because of Hollow Man. It was the last film that Paul Verhoeven directed before he kind of went to a semi-retirement. If you don't know him, he's the guy who directed the original RoboCop, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Starship Troopers. Huge director, and this was his last major Hollywood film, and it's a fantastic Invisible Man remake until we got Lee Whannell's version last year. Great performances by Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth Shue and the rest of the cast. Josh Brolin's also in it. Great effects for the time, very suspenseful, very creepy in a lot of aspects that you don't expect. Very well done. And then Hollow Man 2, generic direct-to-video sequel that honestly is not worth remembering, apart from the fact that Christian Slater shows up for 5 seconds just for a paycheck. That's about it. And then we get to Hot Tub Time Machine. Hot Tub Time Machine, decent comedy, has a fun concept. There's a lot of good actors in this, and they have a good time. Going back to the 80s, back when that 80s nostalgia was just about to burst with Stranger Things and all that stuff. Solid comedy. I had a good time with it. The sequel's terrible, though. Then we get to the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. This is a series that I never had watched as a kid. I always was just kind of like strayed away from it. I don't know why. I just never watched any of these films until the third one was coming out in theaters, and I decided to rewatch every single DreamWorks movie for the first time, or at least like some of them for the first time. Some were rewatches that ended up in a giant ranking video that is somehow my highest ranked video on my channel for some reason. Like, it was literally a video that I recorded in my closet, but regardless, that's a tangent. But regarding these 3 films, I think all 3 of them are great. Like, it's one of the few trilogies that I think is pretty strong all the way around. And DreamWorks does a great job at handling their best franchises with care and respect. And this is a series that handles stuff really maturely, aging up the characters every single time. This is DreamWorks' Toy Story, in my opinion. And then we get another set of films. We get the Hunger Games 4 movie collection. This contains every single Hunger Games movie up to this point. This was a phenomenon back when I was in elementary school and middle school. I remember basically watching every single film in theaters besides the first one, which, for me, the series, I understand why it was a phenomenon. I do like these films, that's why I own them. My favorite has always been Catching Fire. I think it elevates what made the first film work. And then Part 1 and Part 2, I think, are both decent films, but I think they both suffer from the Part 1, Part 2 issue that a lot of these YA movies do. And the fact that it's not something like Infinity War and Endgame, to where it fits and they each feel like separate films. You feel like they had one great grand finale and they just split up into 2 films just because they wanted to make more money on them. And you can tell that both films suffered because of that. But still decent movies. I know they're trying to bring it back. I don't know if you can, but for the time being, that was a great series. And then we get to The Eyes with If Beale Street Could Talk. Watched it for the first time this year because a lot of the Oscar buzz. And yeah, it's a really good movie. Really good drama about, this husband and upcoming father that's, trialed for a crime of, I believe it was rape. And basically, they're trying, mainly Regina King as his mom is trying to uncover where this girl is, and not wanting this dad and husband to go into prison. And it's a very good dramatic thriller. Regina King definitely won that, deserved that Oscar. And then we get to Inception, Christopher Nolan's mind-bending thriller that's probably his most popular film outside the Dark Knight trilogy, and deserves a B. It's a fantastic thriller, action heist film that brings together a fantastic cast, great visual effects, a fantastic score from Hans Zimmer, which is probably still one of my favorite scores of all time for any film. Incredibly entertaining, great dialogue, great action scenes. It's just a fantastic movie. And then we get into the final stretch, first starting off with The Incredible Hulk. And then we get The Incredibles and Incredibles 2 in this 2-movie pack, which Disney's been obsessed with this year. Regarding these movies, the first Incredibles film is one of my favorite movies of all time, one of my favorite Pixar films, one of my favorite just animated films. I absolutely love the first Incredibles. Incredibles 2, I think it's decent. I've only seen it once in theaters, and I haven't seen it since then just because it left me very disappointed just because of how much they could really do with an Incredibles sequel, because it's really the only Pixar sequel that deserved it because of how it ended on a cliffhanger, and you could do so much more with the universe. And the fact they just kind of did like the Halloween 2 thing of just, we're going to set it right after the first one just so we can keep milking Jack Jack, it was just very disappointing just because it was just the same thing. It wasn't bad because it didn't really ruin anything that made the first film work. It just felt very... It felt like a sequel that Circle 7 could have made, that could have been set... It could have been made like 2 to 3 years after the first film came out. I don't know why they had to wait 14 years to make the sequel. Maybe a third film will fix it, but we'll see what happens. Then we get to Independence Day. I think it's a decent, solid 90s, huge summer blockbuster. I understand why it was such a phenomenon when it came out. Roland Emmerich does that type of thing with these types of movies. Decent movie. I understand why it's a tradition of 4th of July, but it's not a fantastic movie in my opinion. And then we get to Inglourious Basterds. Another Quentin Tarantino movie, which I quite enjoy, but I do think it is slightly overrated. My biggest issue with the film is that the title characters, the Inglourious Basterds, really don't get a lot of time to really shine on screen, or at least interact with each other. Apart from Brad Pitt, BJ Novak, who's one of them, and I remember that because he survives until the end. You get the Bear Jew, which of course Eli Roth plays fantastically. And there's, again, fantastic stuff. The milk scene alone is worth the price of admission. It's just that there's a lot... For me, I wish there was a lot more character stuff, but as it is, it's still an incredibly fun movie. And then we get to my final film of the fifth stack. We get Inside Man. Awesome film by Spike Lee. Great stuff in this film. I love the shots of whenever you see Denzel Washington just like being dragged, or no, like when he's walking but he's not moving his legs. You just see him being dragged in a cart. Like whenever like after one of the hostages gets shot in a really intense sequence. Great cast, great directing, great writing. Just really good heist movie. Alright, now actually get into an actual stack this time around, instead of just having like to pull out shelves or pull out Blu-rays from the shelf. Let's just start out with this pack of films. We got the first 3 Insidious movies. Recently I picked these 2 up. I really only had the third film for the longest time. So discussing these films, it's one of the few films franchises like Evil Dead, which I actually enjoy all of the installments. I need to get the 4th one at some point, especially with the 5th one supposedly coming out with Patrick Wilson directing, which I think is very interesting. But getting to the first film, I think is very enjoyable. I think it's a very good thriller by James Wan. Really good jump scare effects I think were kind of perfected in The Conjuring, but still a very enjoyable movie, really likable characters. Insidious 2 is probably my least favorite out of the 3 right here, just because I think it kind of does a lot of the same aspects, and I think the story really isn't as interesting. And then we get to the third one, which I do have a lot of memories for, because it was not only the first film that I got to watch without a parental assistant with me, like a parents or a friend's parents, but it was also the first film, the first horror movie I actually got to watch in theaters. I remember like watching this with a friend right after I graduated 6th grade. And like the whole theater was just packed full of teenagers, and they had to bring like security in to make sure they were all quiet. And it was just a very rambunctious theater experience, which I had a lot of fun with. Still very enjoyable prequel. It's actually the directorial debut of Lee Winnell, who'd written all these movies, and it's kind of like James Wan's boy, basically, his co-writer and co-creator. And it was very enjoyable, really enjoyable prequel. And then we get to Inside Out. Really good original film from Pixar. I think it's slightly overrated. I don't love it on the level a lot of people do, but I still think stuff like Bongo will make you cry. And then we get to Interstellar, another great Christopher Nolan film brought to life by great performances, great visual effects, great score from Hans Zimmer as always, great ambition brought to life, and it's just a fantastic emotional movie especially. And then we get to The Interview, the film that almost brought us to war with North Korea. Very fun film. I mean, I'm a sucker for Seth Rogen comedies, and just this is another one of them which I think is very fun. Randall Park probably gives my favorite performance of his as Kim Jong-un. I'm not a huge fan of him, but I think he's pretty funny in this one. I love the chemistry between him and James Franco, and it kind of sucks that they've broken up for the moment. I don't know, just a very fun concept brought to life by great actors and really great writing. And then we get to another Lee Winnell directed movie, The Invisible Man 2020. The best Invisible Man reboot since Hollow Man. Very enjoyable movie, a film that I had expected nothing from because of how early it was released in the year, and also the fact that the trailer seems like it gave away the entire movie. But this film had a lot more in store that I did not expect. It was a very fun theater experience, very intense. respected your intelligence and just throw a bunch of jump scares at you. Great performance by Elizabeth Moss in the center of it. Good visual effects, good tension building. It was just a very fun movie, and this is what Universal should be doing with their MonsterVerse, or I'm sorry, the Universal Monster Dark Universe, whatever they're doing that isn't Tom Cruise related. Then we get to iRobot in 3D. Decent movie, decent Will Smith blockbuster in the early 2000s. Good concept brought to life by solid visual effects, good directing, and Will Smith's good in the lead role. He's good at playing himself. And then we get to The Iron Giant, one of the criminally underseen animated films that has slowly gained resurgence over the years. I mean, you saw him in Space Jam and Ready Player One, so he's getting a cult following. Brad Bird, this is a tie competition for The Incredibles as the most emotional film he's done. Just, oh my god, the ending alone will make you cry. Great performances from the voice acting, solid animation that still holds up, over 20 years later. Just great stuff, and I loved it. Best performance from Vin Diesel. And then we got the Iron Man trilogy, so it's Iron Man, Iron Man 2, and Iron Man 3. And then we get to Irreversible. This movie's fucked. Then we have the It 2 film collection. This contains It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 from a few years ago. I really enjoyed the first It movie. It's one of the best Stephen King adaptations of recent memory, in my opinion. Great performances from the Losers Club and Pennywise alike. Great directing by Andy Muschietti. Great encapsulation of the 80s when, you know, a lot of other TV shows and franchises really have kind of felt to the wayside about that. I think this film does a great job in production design, great scares, great gore for the most part. Some visual effects are kind of wonky, but overall very enjoyable. It Chapter 2, I've only seen it once in theaters. Definitely not as good as the first one. It has a lot of the magic that's kind of lost. I still enjoy it for the most part, but it's, I don't know, it just feels weird and kind of off in a lot of moments, and definitely has way too much CGI. Then we get to It Comes the Night, the movie that was completely screwed over by marketing, which I actually quite enjoy. If you don't go into the movie think it's a monster film and knowing it's a if you know it's a family drama basically just about them surviving in the apocalypse, it's a lot better for manage your expectations. But great performances. I love Che Edward Schultz as a director. We'll talk about him with Waves, which I also own. But great performances, great score, great atmosphere building, great tension, and just a movie that has a lot to say, and I think it succeeds in a lot of aspects. Then we get to It Follows, which I think is a pretty solid thriller. Good story about, this disease that, if you have sex with someone that has this curse that basically implements you have to run from this certain being that will just walk until it finds you wherever you go on this earth. And I think it's a very scary story about STDs and all of the underlying undercurrents, subtext the film introduces, and the performances are great, the tension is great. I love the score. The synth score in this film is amazing. But yeah, it's one of the first Blu-rays that I got as well, so I have a lot of good times to this movie, and I hope we do get a sequel sometime in the future. Then we get to The Jays with Jack Reacher, one of the Tom Cruise vehicles for him to start a franchise, and that quickly kind of went to shit with the sequel. But as far as this first film goes, it's by Christopher McQuarrie that would later do the later Mission Impossible movies, and you get to see all that talent being brought to life in here. The action is great, the performances are really solid, the film story is very engaging. It's a film that is a lot better than you would expect for a Tom Cruise vehicle. Then we get to Jackie Brown, one of the lesser efforts from Quentin Tarantino, in my opinion. Still a pretty solid movie. Again, I don't think he's ever made a bad film, but following this on Pulp Fiction definitely makes it weaker when you stack it up against that, and also the fact this is the only Tarantino film where he based off another work. It's based off a novel, and you can kind of tell it feels off amongst his filmography, but I still enjoy it quite a bit. Great performances, really solid directing, good dialogue as always. And then we get to this big boy. We got the entire James Bond collection. This contains all 24 official James Bond films from Dr. No to Spectre. Doesn't include Never Say Never Again or that Woody Allen parody GoldenEye film from the 60s. But everything else is here. I bought this, I got this for Christmas 2019, building up to No Time to Die, because before that, I had only seen 3 of the Craig Bond movies and nothing else. And so I started watching these films as the year progressed. And then quarantine happened, and I just binged the rest of them from I think it was Thunderball all the way up to rewatching Spectre. And seeing all these films for the first time and having a good opinion about what all these films are like and getting to like really speak my mind on the James Bond franchise. Most of them are okay. I'm just not a huge spy fan, you know. I'm more espionage. I like more brutal action. I like more, I don't know. A lot of the Bond films earlier, from Sean Connery to about Pierce Brosnan, a lot of them just don't really have good continuity. It just feels like every single one of them's like an anthology story, to where none of the previous films have any weight to them. You have stuff like On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which has a very dark ending, and then you get the Diamonds Are Forever, and just there's no continuity. It's very frustrating to get very invested into a universe to where even recurring actors like Judi Dench and what else? A couple other actors that I just feel like it has no weight to them, in my opinion. Until the Craig films. The Craig movies, at least the two that are great in my opinion, Casino Royale and Skyfall, which Skyfall was one of the first films that got me into filmmaking, along with the first Avengers. I love that because at least it keeps continuity, and it makes the film intense. And, you know, I just like the more brutal side that Daniel Craig has to his Bond stuff. And I hope No Time to Die keeps that flavor, that what made Casino Royale and Skyfall work so well. And I also enjoyed License to Kill as well. I really enjoyed that movie too. And then we get to Jaws, of course, one of the essential films of all time, the film that made the blockbuster, one of the classic Spielberg movies. I don't really need to say anything else about it. If you haven't seen Jaws, watch it. Then we get to the John Hughes collection. This contains 5 different films from the filmography in the 80s. We got Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, She's Having a Baby, Pretty in Pink, and Some Kind of Wonderful. I've only seen 3 of these movies. I've not seen She's Having a Baby or Some Kind of Wonderful. Pretty in Pink, I think, is a decent movie. Really enjoyed Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And then Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is one of the essential Thanksgiving movies and holiday films in general. I watch it every single holiday season, and it's one of my favorite films of all time. I love Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Oh my god. Those aren't pillows. Alright, then we get the first 3 John Wick movies, containing this, without that, probably the best mainstream action franchise of recent memory. John Wick, the first film, I really enjoy. It's probably my favorite out of the 3 thus far, which is kind of surprising because a lot of people prefer the sequels. I just like the world-building stuff in this first film. I like the simplicity of this revenge story about, you know, this retired assassin that's going through grief. His dog is assassinated by this, like, you know, the son of this kingpin. And he just relentlessly goes after his empire. Great stuff. And then you get John Wick Chapter 2, which just only ups the stakes even more and just has a lot more brutal action. I think there's a lot of, there's some issues with this movie I do have with it, but I think it's still pretty fun. I love the dynamic that he has with Common in this movie, John Wick, and how they're constantly trying to kill each other. It's a lot of fun. And then we get to Chapter 3, Parabellum. I think it's slightly better than Chapter 2, but I feel like the film has the most bullshit ending of the franchise thus far, and definitely, for me, as someone who thought that this was going to be the ending of the John Wick franchise, the fact that it's just another sequel and that we're getting 2 more before it ends, which is kind of like the standard nowadays. We're getting that with Mission Impossible, Avengers did that, I don't know why, but for this film, the action is fantastic. I love the chemistry between him and Halle Berry. There's a lot of fun stuff in this movie. I just wish that it felt more like a movie, not just like a chapter. No pun intended. Actually, intended. I'm going to say that. Then we get to Jojo Rabbit, the latest film from Taika Waititi. Saw this in theaters. I haven't seen it since theaters, but I remember really enjoying it. Great, simple story about basically this little boy who wants to be a Nazi. You have Adolf Hitler's basically being his best friend because of the propaganda. You know, he believes that he wants to be his best friend, and just a lot of great stuff. Scarlett Johansson's great in the movie. A lot of the other side characters, like Sam Rockwell, is great. Stephen Merchant, Rebel Wilson. Just a very sweet movie in a lot of unexpected ways, given the concept that you would think be a lot more raunchy, but Taika Waititi just has this very unique flavor to him that makes him just so endearing. Then we get to Joker. Then we have Judas and the Black Messiah, my 3rd or 4th favorite film that's come out this year thus far. Really great movie. Really one of these great biopics that I love about telling a story that you don't really get heard of that much, because I was never told about Fred Hampton, the Black Panther Party, told in school, and learning about this character's history, or sorry, this man's history, and this party's history, and just seeing how, just, you know, how it can quickly fall apart if the wrong people are involved with, you know, Lakeith Stanfield being this undercover agent, in order to like destroy the Black Panther Party, or at least get intel about this party. Very engaging, very enthralling, very devastating when stuff starts going wrong, but it's a great biopic and I highly recommend it. Then we get the Jungle Book 2016 remake by Jon Favreau. Without it, the best Disney live-action remake that's been made to this day. This is what Disney should be doing more of. Take an original film, which, granted, they didn't invent a story, but, you know, take the original animated film, which has never really been among the best Disney animated films to a lot of Disney purists. Take an original that you could improve with a remake and do something like this. Granted, not make it as green screen as you should, but, you know, this film takes it in the right direction. I understand why he was hired for the Lion King and Jon Favreau. He does a great job at making this epic scale story, making the kid actually feel realistic with these entirely CGI backgrounds. The voice acting is great. The songs are really good. This is a very engaging movie, and I really enjoy it. And I wish more Disney movies were like it. Then we have the Jurassic World 5 movie collection. This contains every Jurassic Park film from the first film to Fallen Kingdom. I mainly bought this in anticipation for Jurassic World Dominion, because I do plan on rewatching the entire franchise building up to Dominion, because it's supposed to be the final chapter apparently. And my quick Cliff Notes version of my thoughts on the franchise. Love the first film, absolute classic. Lost World, it's okay, but nowhere near as good. Jurassic Park 3, my least favorite of the franchise, I just don't like it. But I do like William H. Macy. William H. Macy, can't speak today. Jurassic World, my favorite sequel of the franchise thus far, but still nowhere near as good as the original. And then Fallen Kingdom, incredibly disappointing. It kind of gets worse every time I think about it. I've only seen it once in theaters, and the fact that they literally made a Jurassic Park film where the majority of the film set inside a mansion, and then the stupid clone girl twists, it really just kind of destroys some of the lore about the franchise. But, I mean, I'm still excited for Dominion. Then we have Justice League. Yeah. Then we get to the Caves with Karate Kid, the original. Great movie, classic film from the 80s that's still very much timeless today. Great performances, great soundtrack, great conflict between Daniel and Johnny. And, you know, the chemistry between the chemistry between Daniel and Mr. Miyagi is iconic. Great lines, great training sequences, great emotions. It's just a great movie that's still... The reason why it's so timeless is just because it's a classic story, and Cobra Kai has only elevated this movie even more. Then we have Kick-Ass. Then we get to Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2. Solid Tarantino movies. I definitely prefer the first film to the second movie, and I do consider this two just separate movies because of this film separate. If this film was one single movie, they would have released it as one. That's my personal opinion, though. But I prefer Volume 1 to Volume 2 because of the main action scenes, especially between Beatrix and the Crazy 88. Amazing stuff that Tarantino made on screen. Love the soundtrack, love the performances, mainly from the entire cast. You get, you know, Uma Thurman, Michael Madsen. Who else is in this movie? Sorry. Who's the one he fights in the opening sequence? Vivica A. Fox is also great in this movie. You know what I mean. Great stuff, great action, a lot of fun dialogue, a lot of great stuff. Robin Wright is also awesome. Just great duology. Then we get to The Killing of the Sacred Deer. Insane film from Yorgos Lanthimos. This is my favorite film from him. Insane movie, basically about this really creepy boy played by Barry Keoghan, who kind of just shows up into Colin Farrell's life one day and basically kind of threatens that he has to kill one member of his family or else they'll all get sick and die. And it's a very insane concept, great performances, great direction from Yorgos that just makes this concept even weirder and even more just... It doesn't leave your mind very easily after the film ends its credits. Then we get to The King of Staten Island, the latest from Judd Apatow, starring Pete Davidson as the king himself. Solid movie, very enjoyable. I think that the performances are also very good. Marissa Tomei is great. Bill Burr also is very funny as Marissa Tomei's boyfriend. A lot of good dialogue in here. A lot of good, just seems like just characters talk. But it suffers from a lot of the same issues that a lot of Judd Apatow movies nowadays suffer from. It's just the fact that the film's 2.5 hours long. It did not need to be that. It should have been 90 minutes or at least an hour 45. It drops characters so suddenly. Like, you have Pete Davidson's friends who are very prominent in the first half that just get dropped off after the second half and never get referenced again. And a lot of stuff like that happens in the film where it kind of forgets what its story is about. and I wish it was just more coherent. And you know, if Judd Apatow just didn't let the cameras roll for 5 hours straight, but it's still a good movie in my opinion. Then we get to Kingpin. This is kind of a blind buy I bought from Big Lots a couple months ago. I just recently rewatched it. I just recently watched it for the first time, and it's a decent comedy by the Farrelly brothers. Good chemistry between Woody Harrelson and Randy Quaid as they go on this trip to try to get revenge on Bill Murray for screwing up his bowling career by, you know, his hand going you know what I mean. He gets betrayed early in the movie, and good chemistry between him and also Vanessa Angel's also very funny. Definitely goes in directions that you won't see coming, and it's a funny enough comedy. I had a good time with it. Didn't feel like I wasted my money. Then we have Kingsman: The Secret Service. We got Knives Out. Very unexpected hit from Rian Johnson after the the controversy of The Last Jedi. I didn't know what this film was going to be like, and it's a very fun murder mystery, a very much homage to Clue and Agatha Christie, and a lot of these classic murder mysteries are just very fun to see on screen. The cast is enormous and fantastic. The dialogue is so damn funny from everybody. The banter is just so bickery, but it's pathetic in a way that it just makes you laugh. Daniel Craig also as what's the character's name? Detective Blanc is also very funny with his southern accents. Just so much fun, and I can't wait to see what the sequels are. And then we have Kong Skull Island, the second film of the MonsterVerse. Decent movie. I think it's kind of on the same level as Godzilla 2014. Fun monster action, knows more what it wants to be than Gareth Edwards' Godzilla, but the characters are also kind of worse in my opinion. Very generic, just big names, just to get big names, butts in the seats in my opinion. Just fun blockbuster, but nothing that special. Then we have Kung Fu Panda 3. I need to get the other two movies because, once again, like How to Train Your Dragon, DreamWorks knows what to do with a trilogy of films, and this film is just probably my second favorite of the trilogy. I think is improvement over Kung Fu Panda 2. Just a lot of fun characters, a lot of good expanding upon the lore of Poe's family, and Bryan Cranston also, I love him, so seeing him in a movie like this is also very cool. Comedy's good, it keeps what made the first two work, and spades, and it's just a very fun movie, very entertaining. And then the last film of this stack is La La Land, the second major film from Damien Chazelle following Whiplash, and it's a really good musical. And I'm not a big fan of musicals, but I think the sequences in this film are also very well done. The performances from the main leads are great. The cinematography, the choreography are all 10 out of 10 in this movie. Just so damn fun and entertaining, and it has a really good message at the very end of the movie. Sorry, it has a very good message at the end of the movie. I cannot speak. Told you. Alright, next up we got another stack of Blu-rays. Probably stack 7, I think. So starting off, we have Lady Bird, the directorial debut from Greta Gerwig, and it's a fantastic debut. Love this movie. I saw it when I was in high school for the first time, and since, this is about a high school student going through, the growing pains of being a teenager, it definitely stuck with me. Has a fantastic soundtrack. Introduced me to Dave Matthews Band, which I love it for. Great performances by Saoirse Ronan and who's the other chick that's with the shoes in Booksmart? Beanie Feldstein, I think. And also we got Lucas Hedges, Laurie Metcalf. Huge cast. Great performances, great directing, great writing that makes you cry and also makes you laugh. Really enjoyable movie. Next up, we have the Lego Movie, and we have the Lego Batman movie. The two best films of Warner Brothers' now deceased Lego Cinematic Universe. Both these films, show what this universe was capable of, and, I think they are two of the best animated films of the past decade. They're so energetic, they're so fun. They throw every single joke of you damn near every single second, and you can't stop laughing. Great performances, great voice acting, amazing animation that combines stop motion and regular animation so well, seems so seamless, and they do such a fantastic job on these movies that sucks that we're never to get any more from this universe. Maybe Universal will come something up with better, but I don't know. Won't seem likely. Next up we have Life, the movie that everyone thought was a prequel to Venom, and then when it finally came out, which is a regular sci-fi movie that everyone's forgotten about. I saw this in theaters. I've seen it once since on Blu-ray. Enjoyable enough sci-fi movie, good performances, has some unexpected twists and turns. Definitely an Alien knockoff, but I had a good time with it. Then we have The Lighthouse. I love it or hate it movie. I love it. I saw this in theaters back when it came out a couple years ago, and seeing this in a dark room with a bunch of strangers, all of us being silent, this felt like a fever dream. This is one of my favorite theatrical experiences of all time. You cannot recreate the theater experience. That's why I love it so much, because of films like this, it wouldn't have been as effective at home, in my opinion. Love the performances. The movie's so strange and odd and crazy, but I mean, Robert Eggers does that with all of his movies. The black and white aesthetic, I love. The 4:3 aspect ratio, I think, works for the film. It's just, I understand people don't like it, but I personally found it very enthralling. Then we have another Greta Gerwig movie, Little Women. Watched this for the first time last year, bought it on Blu-ray kind of as a blind buy. I heard the praise about it back when it came out, but I didn't watch it because I was busy with stuff. And got around to watching it, and although I have never read the book, I think it's also based off a play, very enjoyable movie, very lighthearted, great performances all around, great cinematography, just very lighthearted, fun movie. Then we have Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, the film that basically made Guy Ritchie's reputation, and this and Snatch both, and it's a great crime movie. Great performances, very solid dialogue, and how the film twists the narrative around in ways you don't see coming. Great directing from Guy Ritchie, very enjoyable, just a blast to watch. Then we have Logan. Then we have Lone Survivor, the first of the Peter Berg, Mark Wahlberg true story trilogy, and although I don't think it's as good as the other two films in the trilogy, Deepwater Horizon and Patriots Day, I still really enjoy this one. It's a very brutal movie, basically revolving just around Mark Wahlberg being this lone, Navy SEAL, just trapped in the wilderness after, his other commandments get wiped out, and a very intense movie, very small scale, but it delivers on everything else. Then we have the Lord of the Rings trilogy. This is just the theatrical versions of the films. I have not seen any extended editions. Like The Hobbit, I watched all these films a couple of summers ago just because I wanted to get them off my belt. And all these films are great, without a doubt. They're beautifully made, masterfully created by Peter Jackson. Great performances all around. It's beautiful cinematography, great grand action sequences, huge lore. I'm just not a huge fantasy guy. They're all great movies. I'm not going to deny that. They just don't really stick with me as much as a lot of other people do. Then we have The Lost Boys, one of my favorite films of all time. Probably my favorite horror film, or at least horror comedy. Just Joel Schumacher does not get the reputation he deserved. Just because he did a couple bad Batman movies does not mean he's a bad director, and this is a prime example. One of my favorite vampire movies, probably my favorite vampire movie of all time. Love the performances of this, from Kiefer Sutherland as the main villain, Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, who's the other? Jason Patric as the main brother. Just, I love all the performances in this movie. I love the soundtrack, the cinematography, the action sequences. The grandpa is also awesome. It has one of my favorite endings of all time. Brilliant movie. Then we have Mad Max Fury Road, the only Mad Max film that I own. I've seen all of them, I just haven't gotten the rest of them yet, but this film I saw in theaters, luckily. Although I was very young, I saw this when I was in 6th grade, and this blew my mind. The action sequences in this film are amazing, because they're all practical, all done in this desert wasteland, and it just looks amazing. Cinematography is beautiful. George Miller does such a great job in the director's chair. The performances from Charlize Theron as Furiosa and, Tom Hardy as the title character are great. Morton Joe's a fantastic villain. Beautiful score by Junkie XL. Just, this is a fantastic film, and I hope we get more of these films. I know they're doing a Furiosa prequel, but I want another Mad Max movie with Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron. Then we had The Magnificent Seven, Antoine Fuqua's Magnificent Seven. I saw this in theaters also, and I have since seen the other version, Seven Samurai, which I also own on DVD, and the 50s one, or 60s one with Steve McQueen. This is my favorite out of the three versions. I know, controversial, but I had the most nostalgia tie towards this film because I, saw it quite young, saw it in middle school. A huge cast, a lot of fun performances, great action sequences. I love the last 30 minutes, where it just goes full chaos with these people just taking out an entire army. Not the most memorable villain, not the most memorable love interest, but I think it's a fun Western. Then we have Mallrats, the second film by Kevin Smith after he made Clerks. Basically in his heyday, back when he made really good movies. And this is a very enjoyable movie. Probably my second or third favorite Kevin Smith movie. Just great cast, great characters all around. I love Michael Rooker as the villain. This this is such a fun movie and has one of the best Stan Lee cameos of all time. Then we have Man of Steel. You got Mandy, which is another Nicolas Cage movie like Color Out of Space, which I bought because of the praise, and I have yet to watch it. Then we have both versions of Maniac, the original 1980 film, and we have the Elijah Wood 2012 remake. Both these versions I really enjoy. The original, speaking on this part, standalone, great slasher film for the 80s, very unique in the fact that it explores the inside of a serial killer's head. Frank Zappa as the title character is fantastic. The gore by Tom Savini is amazing. The psychological effects, and the film's just genuinely just creepy. Like, it's a film that will make your skin crawl genuinely. And then the remake does a great job, what a lot of remakes should do, in that it completely reinvents the original movie, but keeps enough of the core concepts where it feels like it pays homage to the original. The film's mostly shot in first person, and I think it works to the film's benefit. Once again, taking that aspect of the psychological thing about going inside the serial killer's head, I think was very genius. Elijah Wood has done a lot of good stuff in the horror genre in the past decade, and I think this is no exception. Just brilliant movie. I do prefer the remake to the original, though. And then we have Marriage Story on Criterion. A great movie, a lot better than I thought it would be. It just seemed like another Oscar bait movie, but Noah Baumbach. I love this, and I love, what is it? What's the Adam Sandler movie that he did on Netflix also? But both those films were great. Minor Stories. Forgot the name for a second. Great performances. Really shows the realistic side of romance I love in films like 500 Days of Summer. Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson knock it out of the park. The emotions feel real. The performances feel real. Just everything about this film is just so genuine. Then we have The Martian, one of the big breakout hits of 2015. I saw it in theaters. Haven't seen it since theaters, but I do remember really enjoying it. Basically being around Matt Damon, being this astronaut stuck on Mars, trying to get off this planet and try to live on Mars. Great stuff. Then we have The Matrix. I ranked these films a few months ago when every film franchise ranked part 3. Just kind of regurgitating my thoughts on the original Matrix. I mean, it's a great sci-fi movie, definitely revolutionized what we thought about the action and sci-fi genre in the past, 20 years since it's come out. Great performances, a lot of fun action, great soundtrack, mind-blowing special effects for the time, which still hold up fairly well today. It's just streamlined enough to where it's not convoluted, and just the right amount of fun, and just overall just a complete blast. And I sincerely hope that The Matrix 4, which is still coming out later this year, goes back to what made the original work. And then we have the Maze Runner trilogy, one of the better YA series that came out, which I think has kind of been under the radar. I remember a lot of buzz came out about the book back when it came out in elementary school, and I remember a lot of buzz for the first movie when it came out, but ever since then, it just kind of faded away. Scorch Trial, which was definitely my least favorite out of the three, and then when Maze Runner came out, it was like so long after the YA genre died. I mean, Allegiance was like the last one that came out, and that was only like, 2 years ago? I'm sorry, 2 years before this movie came out. But I didn't watch these films until Death Cure came out, and I watched all three of these movies back to back, and I really enjoyed all three of them. I definitely prefer the first and third to the second movie, but I think for a YA series, it's definitely the most consistent out of like Hunger Games and Divergent and all those other franchises. Then we have Mean Girls, a movie that I didn't really expect to like, but I actually really enjoyed. Very fun satire looking at like the high school, cliches and just the different statures of people in high school. And the performances of this film are fantastic. Lindsay Lohan's great. Rachel McAdams plays one of the best villains in recent memory. Tina Fey, who also wrote the movie, is great as like the main teacher, just trying to tell the kids, hey guys, high school is only a blip in your life, but it's just a really fun movie. Then we have Memento, the film that basically kind of defined Christopher Nolan for the rest of his career. Ingenious concept about basically a guy that has impaired memory, so he can't remember anything more than 5 minutes. He can't create any new memories, and the film's told expertly to where it constantly goes back and forth in the timeline, and you don't know what's going to happen next, and more stuff's revealed throughout the movie, and it's just brilliant stuff. Guy Pearce is great in the lead role of, Leonard. He's great. Carrie-Anne Moss is also great. Joe Pantoliano as his friend is also great. Just ingenious by Christopher Nolan. Then we have the Men in Black trilogy. And then we have Misery, one of the best Stephen King adaptations of all time. Kathy Bates in her debut performance as Annie Wilkes is just terrifying. She's constantly flipping the line, being creepy, but also very kooky and very southern and very just sweet. And she can just flip on a dime, just being terrifying. James Caan as this writer, it was also fantastic playing off Kathy Bates in this. They're basically just like the only two characters in the entire movie for the most part, and the film lies on their shoulders, and they just handle it expertly well. The isolation, being stuck in this cabin during a snowstorm, is just handled expertly well. Just, it's what the best Stephen King adaptations, utilize, and I just really enjoy it. Then we have Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, and Fallout. These are the last two Mission Impossible movies that have come out. I own the first 4 on DVD. I've yet to convert them to Blu-ray. But speaking on these latter two movies, these are the Christopher McQuarrie Mission Impossible movies, and both of them are my favorite, honestly. I think this is one of the rare series that gets better and better with each installment because it knows what it does and just tweaks it more with every single installment, in my opinion. Just the performances are all fantastic, especially Fallout. I think the story's great. I think that the action sequences are brutal and they're real, and the fact that just all that stuff is happening on screen for the most part is just really, it's the best part of what I love about movie magic, It keeps you, it keeps hope the fact that not everything's going to be CGI in the future. Just great stuff. Honestly, this is kind of my action franchise. I like it more than Bond. I like it more than Bourne. It's just, I don't know, it's fantastic, and I cannot wait to see what they do with the other two Mission Impossible movies coming out. Then we have Monster House, a nostalgic classic of my childhood. Love these type of mocap movies that Robert Zemeckis did. I understand why it's not for everyone, but for me, I grew up with this type of style animation, so I kind of lean towards it. The story in this film is also great. I love the characters. It's just a very fun movie that I think is genuinely scary for kids, but it can also be really fun and very funny when it needs to be. And the emotional core of the film with Steve Buscemi's character, I think, is also very heartfelt and sweet. It's a lot more than just a dumb kids movie, in my opinion. Then we have Monsters, Inc., a classic of the Pixar genre. One of my favorite animated films of all time. I think I ranked this as my second favorite Pixar movie next to the original Toy Story. Great characters, really solid animation. Once again, Steve Buscemi steals the show as Randall. Just, I don't know, the score's great. The world that it creates about these monsters scaring these kids to feel their energy for their world is just... Pete Docter, he's just a genius. I've yet to see the sequel series on Disney Plus. I haven't heard too many good things about it, but for the longest time, that was one of those movies that I really wanted a sequel to, and I was pissed that they made a prequel that really wasn't that good. Then we have Moonlight, one of the Oscar movies that that almost lost for 5 seconds until it won again. Great movie. Saw us after it won the Best Picture, and Barry Jenkins, fantastic director, great performances. Basically, the movie that kind of introduced everyone to Mahershala Ali, and just great stuff. Then we have Mortal Kombat 2021, my favorite video game movie as of right now. I ranked all of them if you want to check it out. But it's still not saying much, but I really enjoyed this movie. It's not great by any means. I understand why fans of the lore genuinely just don't like this movie, and it makes no sense. I will understand that, but it's just such a fun movie in my opinion. I like the characters, I like the actors that portray them. The action is really fun, the gore is really good in my opinion. I just have a lot of fun with this movie. It's not great, but it's what I want out of a Mortal Kombat movie. Then we have Murder on the Orient Express. This is the most recent version by Kenneth Branagh. That came out a few years ago, and I really enjoyed this movie. I like Murder mysteries when they're done right, and I think this film has a stellar cast, really fun story that keeps you on your toes. Great direction from Kenneth Branagh, and also him as a main character, Detective Blanc. Just great stuff, great story, fun actors, good twist as well, and I had a fun time. I feel so bad for Kenneth Branagh though with Death on the Nile. I hope that film succeeds, but I mean with all the controversy surrounding it, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Then we have Neighbors and Neighbors 2. You can see that. Both these movies are really enjoyable. I haven't seen them in years, but I do remember really enjoying both of them. I prefer the first Neighbors, but they're both really fun movies. I'm a huge fan of Seth Rogen comedies, so this is kind of up my alleyway. But I also think Zac Efron does a great job showing his comedic bone. He's really good at comedic timing. Then we have The New Mutants. Then we have Nightcrawler, which is the amazing movie, one of my favorites of all time. Jake Gyllenhaal as just this Lou Bloom, this guy that's trying to film these accidents, trying to get before the police or the other competition hits, just so he can get news, so he can put it on different news stations for money. Great stuff. The banter between him and Riz Ahmed is great, and where that heads is a very tragic end. Just the film will always keep you on your toes. Super intense. There are just scenes in this film that you just won't forget. I just love this movie. Then we have Nobody. I got this for my birthday by a good friend of mine a few months ago. Actually, a month ago. Sorry. But yeah, quite an enjoyable movie. I put this on my most anticipated of the year list just because this came out of nowhere. The trailer kind of dropped, and seeing Better Call Saul kick ass. I'm a huge fan of Bob Odenkirk outside of Breaking Bad, but seeing him as like this new style John Wick was very interesting to see from the trailers, and I watched it in theaters. I like the movie. I think it's a decent fun time, but I think it's very inconsistent. It doesn't really know what it wants to be because like the film's mainly separated into 3 different action scenes. You get the bus fight, which you see in the trailers, which I love. I think it's the best action scene of the entire year thus far. Then you also get the fight at the house, which I think is decent. And then by the end, the film basically kind of turns into one of the Red movies with Bruce Willis, where it's just like a bunch of old people running around and not getting hit with one bullet. Like, yeah, Christopher Lloyd playing Bob Odenkirk's dad, that's just running around, not getting hit once. And it's just because, like, do you want to be a serious, slow burn action movie, or do you want to be just goofy, rompy, fun movie? I don't know. Hopefully, if they ever do a sequel, I would like to see a tonal consistency more. But as a whole, it's a fun action movie. Then we have No Country for Old Men, one of the Coen brothers' essentials. Great performances, especially by Javier Bardem, playing a terrifying villain. Great slow burn thriller that just kind of like oozes atmosphere, and you just are waiting to see what happens next. Just great stuff by the Coen brothers. Not one of my favorites of all time, but certainly a movie that you must watch. Then we have Now You See Me and Now You See Me 2. I enjoy these movies. I don't know, a lot of people kind of give them shit. I have a good time with both these films. I did prefer the first film than the second movie, but they're both has stellar cast, really fun, spin on the magician genre and how they use their tricks. Just fun stuff. I don't know, they're just really cool movies. And if we ever do get a third one, which has been in development hell for like years, I would like to see it because I really enjoy the movies. Then we have Office Space, getting to the O's right here. Classic Mike Judge comedy, great stuff about these office workers just living their daily lives and just kind of having enough of it. Like classic scenes like whenever Ron Livingston and his coworkers are just destroying the printer in the field is stuff that will make you cry your eyes out laughing. Just great performances, can I have my stapler? There's great stuff in this movie that I loved. Then we have the Mike Banning trilogy, as I'd like to call it. We have Olympus Has Fallen, we got London Has Fallen, and we have Angel Has Fallen. I enjoy these movies. I've seen both London and Angel in theaters. I do prefer Olympus. That's my favorite. Antoine Fuqua, back when he made good movies. Really enjoyable stuff. It's a Die Hard knockoff, but since Die Hard is my favorite movie of all time, I don't mind it, in my opinion. It's just more stuff that I love. I really enjoy Gerard Butler as Mike Banning. His banter between Aaron Eckhart as a president and then eventually Morgan Freeman is also really good. Fun action scenes. Again, it knows exactly what it is and rolls with it. And then last but not least, we have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The latest film from Quentin Tarantino. I've only seen it once in theaters. I've yet to rewatch it since then because it's such a long movie. But I really enjoyed this movie. It's one of my favorite Tarantino movies recently. Probably my fourth favorite behind Django, Reservoir Dogs, and Pulp Fiction. Great performances, really fun action scenes, especially in the third act. It's a very slow burn movie, very much a loose canon film where there's not a lot of plot going on, and it's mostly just Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt just kind of roaming around Los Angeles together, or Hollywood together, and they're just just chilling, living life in the 60s. It's not a very plot heavy movie. You have to be in a certain mood to watch it, in my opinion, but if you're in a mood to watch it, it's a really fun time. Alright, getting into another stack right here, getting back into the O's, we have Only the Brave. A very underseen film that came out, was it 2017? This basically revolves around the firefighters during one of the many California wildfires, and it's a very introspective movie, very much focused on characters, and it makes you respect firefighters even more. It's a great movie, huge cast, and it sucks that it didn't really do that well, and no one really talks about it, because it's actually a really enjoyable movie. Then we have Onward. Once again, very underseen film. Pixar, this is actually the first original film they did after Toy Story 4, which is kind of like their sequel era that kind of ended. And it sucks because I actually watched this film at an employee screening because I worked in a movie theater. Back when it came out, and after like 2 weeks of being in theaters, lockdown happened. The film was just thrown on Disney Plus, and no one's really talked about it that much since. This was Dan Scanlon. It's the same guy who did Monsters University, which I didn't really like that much, and this is a much better film. Great cast here: Chris Pratt, Tom Holland, huge cast. Besides that, and just very enjoyable movie about these two brothers just trying to find this spell to find their missing dad after only half of him comes out this spell, and just tells a really interesting story about letting go and being able to hold on to someone's memory, and just a lot of good stuff that's also really fun at being a good kids movie. Then we have The Outsiders, which is a movie based on a novel which I read somewhat in middle school. Never finished it though. Watched this kind of as a blind buy, bought it, and enjoyed the movie from the 80s. Huge cast right before everyone kind of blew up. You got Tom Cruise, Matt Dillon, Emilio Estevez, Patrick Swayze, Tom Cruise, Rob Lowe, Ralph Macchio. Just it's star-studded cast, and a really good story. It has some good emotions here, and yeah, it's a really, really good movie. Barnes & Noble freaking adhesive. Then we have Overlord, the last film I own with an O. I think everyone remembers this movie primarily because this was meant to be the fourth Cloverfield movie before Cloverfield Paradox kind of killed the Cloverfield movies. But I watched this in theaters, and it's still a really solid movie. I'm kind of glad it went on its own direction. I wish it did better, but this movie kind of came out in November, which is a terrible time for horror movies to come out because, Christmas is the rage. But very enjoyable Nazi zombie thriller, good characters, really good score, good directing by, who's the guy's name? Julius Avery? Yeah. Just a really fun movie, and you should watch it. Then we have the first Paddington film. I need to get a second one because both these films are fantastic. Way better than I thought would be, because from the trailers it just looked like it would just be more dumb kids stuff. But they're very heartfelt, very good messaging, great performances, a very good blending of live action and animation, and they're just so sweet. They're so heartfelt, and I'm really scared for the third one because Paul King isn't coming back to direct it. He's only writing it, but hopefully they can bring the Paddington trilogy to a close. Then we have the three Paranormal Activity films, the first three films at least. Definitely the best of the Paranormal Activity films. They're supposed to get a new one coming out later this year, which I'm definitely interested in seeing. But the first Paranormal Activity definitely revolutionized the found footage genre because it kind of blew up after Blair Witch, but this film kind of blew it out of the water and caused a ton of knockoffs afterwards. And understandably why. I don't think it's a fantastic movie, but it definitely has its effective moments. 2 is actually my favorite of the series. I think it's very much takes what worked about the first film and blew it out of the water and did a lot more with it. And I think it's actually kind of the scariest of the movies in my opinion. Then we have the third one, which I do enjoy, but the 80s aesthetic feels kind of weird and off-kilter, kind of focusing on, what's the main girl's name? Katie's home life, and it's good, has some good scares, especially towards the end, which is when all these movies kind of blow their budget and blow their scares, but enjoyable movie. I do own 4 and 5 on DVD though, and those films I have nostalgia towards because they just get so ridiculous that they're funny. Next up, we got Parasite, the film that won Best Picture last year, and I watched it actually during the award season. I actually missed the opening by Ricky Gervais because I was watching the very end of this film, but very, very, very intense movie, fantastic story that's wholeheartedly original. Great directing by Bong Joon-ho, great cast here. Takes a story that you think you can predict, but then goes in some wild directions that you don't see coming. Just great movie. Then we have Patriots Day, the final film of the Mark Wahlberg, Peter Berg True Story trilogy. My favorite out of the 3 actually. Great drama, and mainly about the Boston Marathon bombings and the aftermath of it, basically when everyone in Boston was trying to hunt down the main bomber that was still alive. Just great performances, great stuff, really intense, really doesn't shy away from the gore in some spots, and just, I don't know, very, very good film. Then we have the amazing Paul Blart and Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. These films have no placements in this collection, but I enjoy both of them really much. I mean, they're dumb movies, I'm not gonna lie. I actually reviewed both of these films back on my channel a couple summers ago, if you want to check those out. But they're movies that hold a special place in my heart, in my opinion. Then we have The Peanut Butter Falcon, a movie that I kind of bought as a blind buy last year, and this is just a very, very sweet, heartfelt movie. Great performances from everyone, especially Zach Gottsagen, I think that's pronounced his name, the main kid with Down syndrome in the movie. He's very sweet. His banter with Shia LaBeouf really is what makes the film so good, and Dakota Johnson, who's gained a lot of good stuff in the indie genre, does great here, as basically the main character that needs to go after these two. And it's just a very, very lighthearted movie that, you know, I recommend. Then we have Pineapple Express, kind of like the go-to Seth Rogen, James Franco comedy. And I've only seen it once, but I remember really enjoying it. Fun performances, good story and comedy, good banter between the main leads. Dan McBride's also very funny in the movie. Just, it's a good time. Then we have these Pirates of the Caribbean 5 box sets containing all 5 films. This is my most recent Blu-ray pickup that I got. Funny enough, I actually got this from my local Walmart, which is very funny because this is a foreign Blu-ray release if you can't tell. But you can see the 12 right here. But yeah, this is very weird because this is the only copy I found at Walmart, and it was just a foreign release, and I was like, okay, I'll pick it up because I'm actually one of those people that does enjoy the vast majority of the Pirates movies, apart from On Stranger Tides. It's the only one where I don't really like it, but I really enjoy Crystal Black Pearl. That's one of my favorites. I enjoy the 2 following sequels, and I enjoy Dem and Ten Hotels, which in this set's actually titled Salazar's Revenge, which is very interesting. But yeah, I enjoy these movies. We're supposed to get a reboot at some point, but I really enjoy mostly all of them. I like swashbuckling. A pirate's life for me. Then we got another box set. We got the Planet of the Apes trilogy. This is the modern trilogy with Caesar. So getting onto all 3 of these movies, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I really enjoy. I think it's probably my least favorite of the 3, but definitely a good start to the trilogy. Dawn, I really enjoy. Let me see if I can pull this out. Dawn, I think, is the best of the 3. Great stuff. Cobra Bad. Apes. Just great stuff. See if I can pull out War. Then we have War for the Planet of the Apes. I saw this one in theaters as well, along with Dawn, and definitely a great conclusion to the trilogy. I don't think it's as good as Dawn, but definitely brings the trilogy to a close, in my opinion, in a satisfying way. Sorry. There's also this really cool booklet on top of it, but it's just kind of a pain to get back into this set. But yeah, there we go. Then we have Platoon, classic war movie, definitely a must-watch. One of Willem Dafoe's best performances. Sorry, one of Willem Dafoe's best performances, and that's saying a lot. But yeah, great stuff. Then we have The Polar Express, which is a movie that I understand why people don't really like it. My mom hates this movie because of the mocap animation, but similar to Monster House, I grew up with this movie. I try to watch it every single Christmas. It's a film that just hits me so nostalgically, and I just love this film all the way through. It's definitely not like the book, but because they had to extend like a 20-page book into an hour-and-a-half movie. Definitely has some very Fast and Furious-esque sequences, but I really enjoy it. I love it. Then we have Saban's Power Rangers, the 2017 reboot of the IP, which I actually quite enjoyed. I saw in theaters with my dad, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm not a fan of Power Rangers. I'm not a big fan of that that genre, that Japanese style that the original series brought. And this series, I don't know, this film I actually really enjoyed. You know, I really enjoyed the cast. Elizabeth Banks, I think, is really fun as the villain. I would have liked to see where they would have gone with the sequel. The Krispy Kreme tie-in was definitely odd, but I had a good time with this movie. Then we have the Predator collection. This contains the main 4 films, again, excluding AVP, just like the Aliens that I have. Predator, Predator 2, Predators, and The Predator. The first film's probably the best of the series. This is one of those franchises where the first film kind of peaks and the rest have just failed to replicate the magic. Even though I do find the first film kind of overrated in my opinion. Predator 2 is just not that good in my opinion. I just don't really enjoy that much. Predators, I think, is the best sequel since the original film, but still not very good. Adrian Brody is not an action star. And then The Predator was just very disappointing, a lot worse than it should have been given the fact that Shane Black directed the movie and written the film. But, I don't know, hopefully with the new film directed by the guy who did 10 Cloverfield Lane, we'll hopefully get something better out of it. But that's just a series. It's a series that should have stayed a one-off. Then we have The Prestige, which I think is my second or third favorite Nolan movie, which is kind of controversial because a lot of people don't really respect this movie that much. It was a film that it took me years to watch it because I watched this kind of in my AVT of 1 class my freshman year, but because I told you with Alfred Hitchcock, I don't really like to watch movies in school, mainly because I just don't like the fact that we have to cut it out between days and we also have to write notes. But I finally watched it during quarantine last year, building up to Tenet, and I really love this movie. It's fantastic, it's dark, it's fucked up in a lot of ways, about these two magicians just going at each other and will scoop to any low just to get to try to one-up one another. Great performances by both Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, Rebecca Hall, Scarlett Johansson, Andy Serkis, David Bowie's also in this movie, and this was great. I love the score, the cinematography, and the direction by Christopher Nolan is fantastic. Just fantastic film, and I think you should give it a chance if you haven't seen it yet. Then we have another Hugh Jackman movie, Prisoners, my favorite Denis Villeneuve movie thus far. Hugh Jackman probably gives his best performance in this film, which is saying a lot because I love him as Wolverine, but he is just so terrifying in this film. He is so... The way he does stuff to Paul Dano in this movie with Terrence Howard is just terrifying, and just some of those brutal stuff you'll see in a movie, in my opinion. Not because it's super gory, mainly just how psychological it is and how just brutal the performances are in this film. Has one of my favorite endings of all time in the movie with Jake Gyllenhaal. I won't spoil it, but it's great. Just brilliant movie. Love it. Then we have Project Almanac, which is a really fun time travel movie. Not fantastic by any means, but I love time travel movies, and this is just one of those movies that just screams that teen fun aesthetic where like you have these teens finding this backpack of one of the deceased friend's dad that built like way back when, and them going back in time and stuff starts going wrong as it always does. It's not too intense. It's not too scary for teenagers, but I think it's just a fun movie, you know. Then we have Promising Young Woman, which, before we get into the film, has the worst cover art of any of my Blu-rays in my collection. I hate this cover artwork. Like, there are so many great posters. Like, there's a great poster with, like, Carey Mulligan, like, sitting on this pair of lipstick that's just drooling. No, it's a pair of lips that's just drooling lipstick. And they could have chose so many great posters, but they decided to choose, like, Carey Mulligan just sitting in a bar somewhere, and there's so much empty space. Like, what is his cover art? And they use this as, like, the digital artwork, too. Like, I don't get why this was chosen. But regardless, I saw this in theaters. It was actually the last movie I saw in theaters before my theater that I work at shut down for a few months, before we reopened for Quiet Place 2. But this is a very enjoyable movie. Carey Mulligan's fantastic in the lead role. Bo Burnham's great as the side role. Just great stuff in this movie. Alison Brie gives one of the best performances of her career. Great story, really fun characters, goes in directions that you don't expect or see coming. A great directorial debut from Emerald Fennell, however you pronounce it. Really fun thriller that I really enjoy. Then we have Pulp Fiction. Bring out the Gimp. I think the Gimp's slipping. Just my second favorite film of all time, absolute classic, my favorite Tarantino movie. Great performances, fantastic characters, some of the best dialogue scenes you'll ever hear in a movie. The Ezekiel 25:17 speech will give you chills. Just what is there else to say about Pulp Fiction that you haven't already heard about it? It's a brilliant movie. Then we get to my third favorite movie of all time, ironically enough, Punch Drunk Love, my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. This is a movie that I probably shouldn't like on the surface. It's a very artsy movie, very much strange and quirky and off-kilter, and very much unlike Paul Thomas Anderson's other films. If you know what he usually does, he usually likes to do like these two big 2.5-hour period pieces that's very introspective and very dark and very, he likes to just do stuff like that, but this film's very much like a short film. It's only 90 minutes. Very much just a character study, focusing on the day of the life of just Barry Egan, played by Adam Sandler, my favorite performance of his career. Love him in this role. Trying to get with Emily Watson and just all this other strange stuff with Phil Seymour Hoffman being like this, leading this sex line operation at a laundromat. Just great performances, great acting, great score by John Bryan, my favorite score of any film. I love this film. I watch it every single year. It's just so rewatchable, so just enjoyable. I love this movie. Pun intended. Then we have the Thomas Jane Punisher film from 2004. And then we have the Purge 4 movie collection. This contains the first 4 films. This does not contain the Forever Purge because it hasn't come out on Blu-ray yet. But it's not a very good movie, I will say that much. but I had fun with it. Much like these movies, the first 4 Purge movies, I'll talk about them. The first film is actually probably my least favorite, not the first Purge, the prequel, but the first film with Ethan Hawke, which I hate that title. But the original Purge film with Ethan Hawke, I think it's probably my least favorite out of the 5 films, just because it doesn't explore the concept that much about, you know, having a day where all crime is legal for one night. Purge Anarchy and Purge Election Year are my favorite out of the 5, just because they explore the concept very well. I love Frank Grillo as the knockoff Punisher. He's very fun, especially Election Year is probably my favorite out of the series. And then the first Purge is a decent prequel, but nowhere near as great as it should have been, and nowhere near as interesting as it should have been. It was just a cash grab, you know what I'm saying? Then we get into Q, the only movie that I own on Blu-ray that starts with a Q, Queen and Slim. Very enjoyable movie. Picked this up as a blind buy, and very much enjoyed it. It's very much a modern retelling of Bonnie and Clyde, and the main performances with Jodie Turner-Smith and Daniel Kaluuya are fantastic. I genuinely believe their romance, and the way it ends is very, very tragic. But great performances all around, great soundtrack, great cinematography, great direction. It was a very much enjoyed movie. I say that phrase a whole lot. Sorry. Going off the cuff is kind of hard sometimes. Then we get to ours with Race. It's a movie that actually, I bought it on Blu-ray when it came out for the first time, like around 5 years ago. And I recently watched it because my U.S. History and Film class, my senior year, we had to rewatch this movie. Or we had to watch this film, so I rewatched it. And it's a very good biopic. It tells a story about Jesse Owens when he raced in the 1938 Olympics. And it's a very inspiring story. Really like the main, was Stephen James as Jesse Owens. He's great. Jason Sudeikis is great as his coach. Just very much lighthearted, fun movie that doesn't afraid to get dark sometimes, but very inspiring movie. Then we get to Raging Bull, one of the classic Scorsese movies, the go-to Robert De Niro and Scorsese's collaborations. I love Robert De Niro as his boxer that's just slowly going like into madness. Like his self is crumbling as he gets more wealth and more power, and just a story about this boxer losing what made him special over the years. And it's just a very good dramatic thriller that has some good action sequences with the boxing stuff, and just, it's a great movie. What else can I say about it? Then we get The Raid Collection. This mainly just contains just the 2 Raid movies. I don't know. I don't get why movies that only have 2 films are called collections, but whatever. That's a tangent. These 2 films are 2 of the best action films I've ever watched. I love the Raid movies. I think that the martial arts incorporated in these movies is brilliant. I like Ugo Kijoa? How do you pronounce his name? Ego Ueas. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but him as the main character is fantastic. I love all the villains that he has to interact with. It's just so much of a blast and knows exactly what you want it for. It doesn't waste any time trying to get into you with an investing story, great characters, great action sequences. They're just complete blasts of films, and I hope we get a 3rd one in the future. Then we get to the Rambo collections. This contains all 5 of the Rambo movies. First Blood through Last Blood. I've watched all these films for the first time a couple years ago, back when Last Blood was coming out in theaters, and seeing all these films for the first time, it's a decent action franchise, but compared to Rocky, nowhere near as good in my opinion. The First Blood, I think is good, but definitely overrated in my opinion. But still the best of the 5 films. 2 and 3, I'm not a huge fan of 80s action films, so that 80s action cheese that it brings to it, like the over-the-top aesthetic, just didn't really work for me that much. Rambo 4, I think, is the best sequel of the franchise, but still has a lot of issues. And then Last Blood, it's basically like a gory version of Home Alone. It very much feels like a weird note to end off the franchise on, where Rambo 4, I think, did a better job at ending off the series. But overall, still a decent action franchise. I enjoy it. Then we get to Ratatouille. Brad Bird, brilliance at animation. This is no exception. Great story about this rat that learns to, that helps this Chef Linguini to cook and, fall in love and all this stuff. Great sequences, especially with like the food critic that's super snobby. Just great stuff in this movie. Love it. You haven't seen it yet, check it out. Then we get to Ready or Not. This is the breakout hit from who are the directors who are doing the new Scream movie? Matt Benentili-Opelin and Tyler Gillett. Sorry to pronounce that wrong. But this made the breakout hit of Samara Weaving. She is great in this movie. I saw this in theaters and had a complete blast of this movie. It's fun. It's gory. Very simple story, but it's executed very well by the directing and the acting and the writing. It's a blast. I had a fun time. Then we have Wreck and Wreck 2. Probably my favorite found footage horror movies of all time. I love these movies. These are really intense, really scary, genuinely creepy. Like the first Wreck movie is genuinely intense and genuinely just like the jump scares in this film will genuinely like keep you on the edge of your seats. The performances are great. The found footage aspect genuinely adds to the tension and the building of just suspense throughout the entire runtime. It's just, these two are fantastic films, and the series overall is just very enjoyable. Then we have Requiem for a Dream, one of the most depressing films you will ever watch. This film is so damn sad, but it is definitely a must-watch, just to show how much your life can spiral out of control if you get into drug habits, and it's so sad. It is so dark, it's so depressing. Darren Aronofsky just knows how to get at your heartstrings and just knows how to twist that knife even further. Great stuff, but definitely not a rewatchable movie. Then we have Reservoir Dogs. My second favorite Tarantino film, my fifth favorite film of all time. I absolutely love Reservoir Dogs. It is a must-watch and definitely an inspiring movie for a filmmaker that really didn't do anything beforehand besides like a film like My Best Friend's Birthday that didn't really do that well. For a director that got such a great cast off the bat, great action sequences, a heist movie that isn't really told through the heist. The gore's executed very well. The dialogue is fantastic. The tension is just built throughout the film expertly. It's just such a fantastic debut from Quentin Tarantino, and a film that has very rarely been matched since, in my opinion. Then finally, we have the original Return of the Living Dead. Very fun spoof on the zombie genre that has fantastic visual effects, or practical effects I should say. Great gore, great characters, a lot of fun stuff. You get, who's the guy that played Tommy Jarvis in Friday the 13th 6? Tom Matthews. He's fun as the main character, and just, I don't know, great gore, great action sequences. A complete blast of a zombie movie. Alright, getting into the next stack, we're starting off with The Revenant. I've only seen this once in theaters, and this theater experience will always stick in my memory. Sorry, I can't speak. Because for some reason, I guess one of the movie theater employees decided it would be funny to crank up the AC. Because for how cold this movie is, and for how much just like you just see sequences of just, like people like Leonardo DiCaprio just like rummaging around in the cold rivers in the dead of winter, and the ravines and that shit. It felt so cold. It was the coldest theatrical experience I've ever been a part of. Like I literally had to I was already wearing jeans and a long sleeve, and I had to like wrap the long sleeve around my legs just to keep warm. Like it felt like you felt immersed in the theater experience so much. But on top of that, this film is just so brutal. This is another film by Alejandro G. Inarritu. The same guy did Birdman, and yeah, this film is unrelenting. The camera work is amazing. The performances are fantastic. I love Tom Hardy as the villain, and it's a great movie. And then we have Richard Jewell, the latest film from Clint Eastwood. Before we got Crime Machos coming out in a few weeks here. But I wanted to see when it came out a couple years ago, but I didn't really have the time to. And I bought it on Blu-ray last year, decided to watch it, and I really enjoyed it. True story about the 1996 Atlanta Olympics bombings that were attempted, and the title character Richard Jewell, he stopped it, but he was then he was then prosecuted because he was believed to be a part of the bombing situation, and it was a very good thriller, very good story about how media can screw over a person's life, and it's very well done. Then we have the Riddick trilogy, the probably most successful franchise Vin Diesel has been a part of that hasn't been related to Marvel or Fast and Furious. I really like this series. I watched all of them for the first time last year when Bloodshot was coming out because I wanted to catch up on a lot of Vin Diesel stuff that wasn't related to Dominic Toretto. And this is a really good series. I enjoy all three of them. My favorite actually is Chronicles of Riddick, which a lot of people think is their least favorite, which I understand why, but I like the big blockbuster aesthetic it has to it. Although it does have some very terrible lines. It's been a long time since I spelled beautiful. Like, ugh, that's gross. But I like Vin Diesel as Riddick. I think that the world that the film creates, all three of these movies, is very well done. I like the design. I like all the directing of all the movies. Has some great performances and just a great sci-fi aesthetic. And I can't wait to see how they rip it off with the fourth Riddick movie, which I've been talking about for years. Then we have the original RoboCop in this Arrow release. This is one of my favorite films of all time. Probably my favorite Paul Verhoeven movie. Great sci-fi concept, great performances, fantastic score. Very small scale in a lot of aspects, but a lot of the satire and a lot of the messages still hold up very well today, over nearly 40 years later. Great lines, especially like the final line, "What's your name? Murphy." Just fantastic movie. Then we got the Rocky Saga. So we got the Rocky Heavyweight Collection, and then I also have the 2 Creed movies. Speaking solely on the Rocky films, just the 6 in this Heavyweight Collection, the original Rocky is one of my favorite films of all time. Absolutely love it. Rocky 2 is pretty solid. Rocky 3 and 4 are fine, but the 80s cheese, I don't know. I don't really like, similar to Rambo, I don't really like Rocky in the 80s aesthetic. But it does have fun moments. Rocky 5, my least favorite, just pretty boring. Rocky Balboa, a great return to form for the franchise. Really enjoy it. And that's where the series could have ended. But then we got Creed, the best film in the series besides the first one, in my opinion. Ryan Coogler did a great job directing it. Fantastic performances, great boxing sequences, especially that one-shot sequence we get halfway through the film. And I remember seeing this in theaters, and this is actually the first film where I kept my movie ticket, and I've since then just kept all my movie tickets that I've seen in theaters since then. And so I have a good memory to this film. And then Creed 2, pretty solid sequel. I saw this with my cousins in Delaware, Thanksgiving weekend that came out, and pretty solid continuation of the story, bringing back Ivan Drago and his son. I thought it was very interesting, and how all the family ties come together, and then sending up Rocky on a high note was just very well done. It's just a very great series overall, and I cannot wait to see what Michael B. Jordan does in the directing chair for the 3rd Creed movie. Then we have the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I kind of bought this because I wanted to watch it because it's been a while. I'm sorry, it's one of those movies where I hadn't seen it until last year, and I wanted to get off my watch list. And it's a decent musical. I'm not a huge fan of musicals, just to put that out there. And this is a pretty solid movie. Tim Curry's fantastic. I definitely see why he's such like a drag icon still 45 years later. I understand why it's revolutionary. It's a movie that I do appreciate, but I don't see myself rewatching it that often. Then we have Roma, another Netflix film that I own a Criterion. Fantastic movie. I mean, this film is just beautifully shot. Once again, the black and white aesthetic really just helped the movie's tone and pace and structure, and just the aesthetic of it just helps out with the themes overall. The main performances were fantastic as well. Alfonso Cuarón does a great job directing. The film is beautifully paced, beautifully shot, really well written. It's a fantastic film, and shows that Netflix films aren't just like, teen schlock like The Kissing Booth. Then we have Sausage Party, getting into the S's. This is a film that I know a lot of people don't like, and I understand why, especially what happened behind the scenes with the animators. That was terrible. I hate that. But I do have a lot of nostalgia ties toward this movie because 5 years ago, I got to watch this with my best friends in middle school in the 8th grade. And this is a perfect film for a middle schooler. It's raunchy, it's gory, it's just so zany and all over the place that I saw this in theaters, and I absolutely love the experience. It's still one of my favorite movie theater experiences of all time, and still, even rewatching it last year with my friends, we still get a huge laughs out of this movie. It's a fun concept. I understand why it doesn't get, again, I understand people don't like this movie, but I personally it has a special place in my heart. Then we have Saving Private Ryan in 4K. This is probably like the last great Spielberg movie he's made. In my opinion, like, he hasn't made a bad movie since, but I feel like a lot of the films he's done past this film have either been very forgettable movies or Oscar bait films like Munich and Lincoln, and you know what I mean. But this is a classic war movie. Great story about Tom Hanks and his battalion trying to save Matt Damon to send him home. Just great stuff, great action sequences. Just the way it's shot is just so brutal. The same way that Spielberg worked with Schindler's List, he's able just to get so down and grounded, so gritty. Especially whenever you get the scene towards the end where Tom Hanks is shooting the tank with the pistol. Great stuff. Then we have the Saw franchise. So we have the first 8 Saw films in the Saw collection, and I recently just picked this up, but Spiral from the Book of Saw. So I just ranked this films recently, a few months ago, on every film franchise ranked. So I'm not going to get too deeply into this franchise, but I recently watched all these films. Rewatched all these films, and then Spiral I watched in theaters. Getting into the franchise, I really like the first 3 Saw films and Saw 6. Apart from that, the rest of the franchise ranges from mediocre to pretty bad. And that does go with Spiral as well. Spiral was a very disappointing movie in my opinion. I walked in knowing none of the marketing, none of the trailers, Not really knowing what the film's about besides Chris Rock is a cop and Samuel L. Jackson plays his father, and it has to do with a copycat killer. That's all I knew. And still walking out of it, it was okay, but not as good as it could have been. Then we have Scarface. Say hello to my little friend. Terrible Al Pacino accent. But Brian De Palma's remake of the gangster film from the 30s. Fantastic movie. Really fun, really in-your-face 80s. Just insane action and, just this classic story of rise and fall in the gangster world about Tony Montana, this immigrant that rises to power and then just crumbles everything underneath it. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic movie, sorry. Then another Spielberg classic, Schindler's List. I just talked about this with Saving Private Ryan. One of his best ever. Definitely not a very rewatchable movie, but definitely one that you should watch at least once in your life. Very powerful stuff about the Holocaust. Probably the best Holocaust film ever made. Probably the best performance by Liam Neeson as Schindler himself. Just great stuff. It's a powerful film. Then we have School of Rock, one of the best Linklater movies in my opinion. The film that basically kind of defined Jack Black. It's probably his best role to this day. It was just made for him. His class of kids that he teaches also have great chemistry. Miranda Cosgrove, she kind of appeared in here before. She kind of blew up on Drake and Josh and iCarly. Just great cast, really great music, just fun pace. It's just such an enjoyable and lighthearted movie. Then we have Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, probably my favorite Edgar Wright movie and one of my favorite comic book movies of all time, and one of my favorite films of all time. I love this movie. It's so energetic, so much fun, so stylistic, but still has so much heart amongst all the stuff. Fantastic cast, fantastic chemistry. All the evil X's are just all so unique and so much fun that you can't help but love it. Then we have the 4-pack of Scream films, Scream 1 through 4. This is a Canadian release that I got from eBay in preparation for the new Scream film coming out next year, actually. And this is, again, one of those horror franchises that just remains incredibly consistent, very well done. The first Scream movie is one of my favorites of all time. I absolutely love it. Scream 2, pretty solid sequel. Keeps the consistency up of the first film. Scream 3, definitely the black sheep of the franchise, the one that everyone says is probably the worst one, and I agree. And Scream 4, great return to form for the franchise. Really enjoy what they did different, where they tackled remakes that time around, and just it's a great franchise, and I hope to see it continues that consistency without Wes Craven. We'll see what happens, though. Then we have Searching, a film that I really didn't know what to expect walking in. I knew from the trailers that this would be a film that was entirely shot on a desktop, and it's so much more than that. This is a fantastic found footage movie, if you want to call it that. John Cho as the main title character, this dad is just looking for his daughter the entire time, and the way that the film unravels its story is so intense and so enthralling that you wouldn't see it just from a desktop, but the film is so well directed and well written to where you feel just as intense if this film was just shot like a regular movie. It's just a fantastic movie. Then we have Selma. Recently picked this up from Target. Great biopic. David Oyelowo is fantastic as Martin Luther King Jr. Just powerful stuff. Really good classic story about black history brought to life. Really well done by Ava DuVernay. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Then we have Serenity 2019. I actually reviewed this on my channel a couple months ago if you want to check that out. But this one was not good. It is terrible, but it's so damn funny that it is so good. It's so entertaining. It's just, this film is a lot weirder than you would expect from the trailers. I thought it would just be a generic mystery thriller with Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway, but it is so much weirder and is so much funnier. Check it out, please, if you want a good laugh. Then we have Seven, one of the classic David Fincher films, probably the film that made his career after Alien 3. Just fantastic murder mystery that really doesn't show any of the murders, which is that sounds like a bad concept, but David Fincher just brings it all so well from the editing perspective and the directing perspective. The writing is fantastic. The chemistry between Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman as these cops just trying to hunt down this mysterious killer. As Brad Pitt's like the new guy in the force, and Morgan Freeman's like this guy almost on the brink of retirement. Just great stuff. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. Then we have The Shape of Water, the Best Picture winner of 2017, I think. And Guillermo del Toro, he's always great at fantasy stuff, and this is no exception. I love the practical work in this movie. Doug Jones is fantastic as the main creature that... who's the main actress? Sally Hawkins is into. and just the romance feels genuinely sweet. The other cast characters like Octavia Spencer, Rachel Jenkins, just great stuff in this movie. Beautiful cinematography, super stylistic, but also has a lot of substance to it. Just a great movie. Then we have The Shawshank Redemption. Probably the best, or the most well-known Stephen King adaptation of all time. Probably the most praised of his. Not my favorite, but it's definitely amongst my favorite films of all time. It's a brilliant masterclass story about this guy that goes into prison and just seeing how demented and just screwed the prison system really is, and how he grows relationships in this prison yard. It's fantastic. Frank Darabont is the brilliant director. Then we have Shazam. And then we have Shrek on 4K, because why not? Shrek, I mean, it's a great movie. I really enjoy it. I do prefer Shrek 2. I don't have it on Blu-ray yet, but this is definitely the film that made DreamWorks into what it is now, and it's all the better for it. Then we have Short Term 12, a very underrated film in my opinion, a fantastic movie. It's amongst my top 100 of all time. Very simple story about Brie Larson and John Gallagher Jr. as basically like these caretakers in his halfway house, and basically going through all the dysfunctional relationships that they have to go through in this movie. It's a very small scale film. It's directed by Daniel Destin Cretton, who just came out with or is about to come out with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. He also did Just Mercy and the Glass Castle adaptation. This is my favorite film from him thus far. We'll see what Shang-Chi does, but I love the performances, love the action. I'm sorry, not the action, it's drama. I say the same things a million times, but love the drama. The writing's fantastic. The relationships genuinely feel real, and that's all scripted well. It's all directed well. It's all edited well. It's just a very, very sweet and very emotionally riveting movie. Then we have Shutter Island, another classic pairing of DiCaprio and Scorsese. Really solid mystery about DiCaprio having to go to this island, this mental institution on this island, and stuff starts going wildly crazy, and you don't know what reality you're in, and you don't know where it's gonna go, and it's a really good thriller. Then we have Sicario and Sicario Día de Soldado. Sicario is a fantastic movie. Once again, another great addition to Denis Villeneuve's filmography. Great action, really intense, does not shy away from the cartel and the grim and despair of everyone in that situation. Just fantastic cast, fantastic directing, fantastic writing. Everything just files on all cylinders. And then we get the Día de Soldado. I've only seen it once in theaters, but I do remember really enjoying this movie. Having the absence of Emily Blunt doesn't really destroy the movie. It's not as good as the first one, I think, mainly because of Denis Villeneuve not returning. But still, the performances are really good. The action's really well done. It's Taylor Sheridan, who did Hell or High Water and Those Who Wish Me Dead, and he wrote the first Sicario. So a lot of what made the first film work still works here, and I really enjoy it. Then we have The Silence of the Lambs and Criterion, my favorite Hannibal Lecter movie by far. And it's just fantastic stuff. Anthony Hopkins, his introduction as Hannibal Lecter is just iconic. His dialogue scenes with Jodie Foster in the prison cell is iconic stuff. Nice Chianti. Great stuff. What is it? Buffalo Bill, iconic villain. Put the lotion in the basket. Intense, great soundtrack, great intensity. It's just so enthralling and just so engaging that you can't help but watch it. Then we have Silent Night, Deadly Night and Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. I actually did review all 6 of these movies on my channel for last Christmas. If you want to check that out, I'll probably leave the card above. But these are definitely my 2 favorites, and these are the only 2 films I believe that were released on Blu-ray thus far. I think the remake was released on Blu-ray, but these are the ones I like keeping because these are my 2 favorite of the franchise. The first one's definitely a fun slasher with a very controversial history, and it's definitely one of the better Christmas slashers out there. Very unique take on the slasher genre, where it's mainly focused on the upbringing of the serial killer and not just some random teenagers that are going to be slaughtered. Very good psychological piece. And then Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, one of the best bad films ever made. My personal favorite bad movie of all time. I love this film. It is a must-watch every single Christmas. It is so damn funny. Garbage Day! Eric Freeman as Ricky Caldwell is just iconic for how insane he is. The history behind this movie is so interesting and so fun. And the fact that because half of this movie is just flashbacks of the first film, you really only need to watch the second film if you want to watch both these films at once, But yeah, both these films are really fun, and they're must watches if it's on Christmas, in my opinion. Then we have 16 Candles, another classic John Hughes movie. Great chemistry between Molly Ringwald and, what was it? I forgot the other actor's name. Paul Dooley, I think. And also you got Anthony Alcohol in this movie. Just, just a very fun 80s teen movie. And then, they say it was gonna be an easy grab. Ain't no easy grab, they got tea. Sleepless. This film wasn't great, but I had a lot of fun watching this in theaters with my dad, and it's just a fun movie. I like movies that are set all over the course of one night. I like movies that are set in casinos. I like the film, the way it's shot. I like the acting for the most part. It's a dumb movie, but I have fun with it. Then we have Slight, a very underrated superhero movie that I did cover on underrated films back when I started doing it like 2.5 years ago. I saw this in theaters and then double bill with The Circle with Emma Watson and Tom Hanks, and this is a lot better than The Circle. But very underseen movie, basically revolving around Jacob Lattimore. He's this magician who he placed these wires in his wrist and his fingertips that basically can make him do lift magnetic objects so he can perform tricks to get money for him and his daughter, played by Storm Reed. And basically, because their parents passed away, and Dule Hill from Psych is basically this drug dealer that has taken care of Jacob Lattimore, and he wants to break away. And there's also this girlfriend that gets thrown into the mix, where he wants to get away from the life, and just, it's a very small scale movie, but it's very heartfelt, very sweet in a lot of ways, and very intense when it needs to be. Then we have Slumdog Millionaire. Danny Boyle, I'm a huge fan of him, but I'm not a huge fan of Bollywood movies, and so getting into this, I didn't really know what to expect, but I actually really enjoyed this movie. Basically being about this game show, and you, the whole time, what's his name, Dev Patel, he basically has to guess all these answers right so he can, get out of this really hasty situation. Very good movie, really intense when it needs to be, really funny when it needs to be. It's just a very great movie in my opinion. Then we have Snatch on 4K, one of Guy Ritchie's classic films, and just a very, very entertaining movie. Great cast, great dialogue, very memorable scenes, fast pace, just what you want from a Guy Ritchie films here. Then we have Snowpiercer, the first film I watched from Bong Joon-ho before I watched Parasite, and it's just a very, very intense, engaging, this is a great movie, great thriller, basically about being these, it's a post-apocalyptic future where all of humanity is left us on this never-ending train, where the rich are in the front of the train and get all the resources, and then on the back of the train is the majority of the population left, where they just get these little block of fruit squares to eat for the day, and it's just this cast is just so gigantic. Chris Evans, one of his best performances in my opinion. Tilda Swinton is great as a villain. Octavia Spencer, Ed Harris, great cast, great production design too. I love the look of the train. Great direction, great writing, great action scenes and choreography. Just a really, really intense and just really engaging movie. I know I'm saying a lot of the same adjectives, but when you talk for 4.5, 5 hours straight, you start to run out of ideas. Then we get to Soul, which is the most recent Pixar film that's been released on physical media, I believe. No, Luca just came out on physical media. But this, my favorite film that came out last year, was a complete surprise. I really didn't know what to expect because the trailers really didn't give much away, which I really liked. Because the concept when you watch it is so odd and strange and abstract that it's hard to really market this to kids. But it's very mature for a Pixar movie. It's Pete Docter, who is just a genius. And I love the performances, the voice acting, the characters, just the animation and the stylistic choice that Pete Docter and his animation team went for in this film was just genius. I love this movie. It's fantastic, and it sucks that I didn't get a theatrical release here in the States. Then we get to Southpaw. Really solid Antoine Fuqua boxing movie, but this came out the same year as Creed, and I think it kind of fell in that shadow because it really doesn't break the mold of a lot of boxing movies, but it is really good for what it is. Then we have Speed. Just recently rewatched this for my birthday because I love this movie. It's one of my favorite films of all time, in my top 15. Yes, it's a Die Hard knockoff, but it's the best kind of Die Hard knockoff. I love Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock, and Dennis Hopper plays one of my favorite villains in any film. I love him in this movie. Him and also, who's the guy from Dumb and Dumber? Jeff Daniels. Him and his chemistry with Keanu Reeves is also great. Just very intense, a lot of fun, great soundtrack, really well directed, and it's just a lot of fun. Hopefully we get a sequel with Keanu Reeves that isn't a Cruise Control. And then lastly, we got all the Spider-Man films right here. So we got the Sam Raimi trilogy, Spider-Man 1 through 3. We got Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Alright, getting to another stack. Starting off, we got Spotlight, the Best Picture winner, I believe, of 2015. This is a really damn good biopic, basically chronicling the story about the New York Times, I believe, the New York Times authors, the writers that exposed the whole Catholic priest controversy back in the early 2000s. Very well crafted from a story perspective, great directing, great acting from a completely stacked cast. Really great movie. Then we have Spy, one of the better Melissa McCarthy comedies, once again by Paul Feig, same guy that did Bridesmaids and The Heat. He just knows how to direct comedies very well with Melissa McCarthy. He has a great cast, very well plays in the spy genre very well. Just a very enjoyable, entertaining movie. Then we got Stand By Me on 4K, my favorite Stephen King adaptation of all time, and in my top 10 of all time. I love this movie. Very sweet story, very simple story about these four teenage boys just walking on these train tracks to find this dead body to see if they can get a reward from it. And it's a very mature movie, very much shows how these boys have aged, or like age across this journey and mature. Kiefer Sutherland's great as the villain, has some very memorable scenes and lines of dialogue, and just is a fantastic movie. If you have not seen it yet, please check it out. Then we have another 4K, we got Starship Troopers. I actually watched it for the first time this year. This is a Paul Verhoeven movie, pretty much the only big film aside from Showgirls that I had not seen yet, and I understand why does people like it. It's a very fun sci-fi movie, once again like RoboCop, very much like plays on the satire of, marketing and wanting you to join the military and all that type of stuff, and how people, not everything is as it seems from the marketing. Great cast from like Neil Patrick Harris, Jake Busey, Casper Van Dien, just huge cast. Michael Ironside's in this movie. Really saw special effects that mostly hold up over, was it 24 years later almost. Great action, really fun movie. It's not as great as a lot of people made it up to be in my opinion, but still a very fun movie. Then we have, I believe, this is the Kelvin line of Star Trek movies, the J.J. Abrams trilogy, as I like to call it, even though he didn't direct the third movie, like Star Wars, which we'll get to in a second. So we got the 2009 reboots, which I quite enjoyed, probably my favorite out of these three movies. And then I saw both Into Darkness and Beyond in theaters. I think Into Darkness is probably the weakest of the three Kelvin movies, but I still quite enjoy it more than most people. And Beyond, I haven't seen it since theaters, but I do remember having a really good time with it, but it definitely fell off from the first two. Then we have the original Star Wars trilogy, the, special editions. I got this, actually, a friend of mine gave it to me a few months ago, just he had an extra copy and just wanted to give it away, so he just gave this to me. The Star Wars franchise is one similar to Back to the Future, to where it gets referenced so much, to where I've seen them once. I watched them for the first time when The Force Awakens was coming out, like 6 years ago. I haven't really watched any of them since, just because, again, they're quoted so often, there's so many things that are referenced and talked about that it's like, why do I need to talk about it? And just like, because I didn't really grow up with these movies, I didn't watch them when I was a kid or anything like that. So these movies are all great, don't get me wrong, but like Lord of the Rings, they just don't really hold that special of a place in my heart, in my opinion. Then we get to Step Brothers, a very funny movie from John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell, same team that brought us Talladega Nights, which we'll talk about in a second here. But yeah, very funny movie, great cast, just has some great moments. Did we just become best friends? Yup. Great dialogue and chemistry between the two leads. It's just a very fun movie. Then we have Steve Jobs, a very good biopic by Danny Boyle. He just knows how to direct movies. The way he tells a story about, like, basically chronicling 3 different expos that Steve Jobs is hosting, and how it chronicles through those three, how those 3 expos basically tell his story. Very well done. Michael Fassbender is fantastic in the lead. I have not seen the other one by Ashton Kutcher as the lead, who's also fantastic in Step Brothers, by the way. But yeah, him as Steve Jobs, and then Seth Rogen as Wozniak, as Steve Woz. Also fantastic. Just great banter, chemistry, dialogue, very well done. And the screenplay by Aaron Sorkin, fantastic. Then we have another great biopic, Straight Out of Compton. I remember seeing this in theaters, and I was really young when I saw it. I was like in 7th grade. when I saw this, and my mom, who went to see it with me, which I don't really usually do that often, she would like cover my eyes whenever we see nudity, like during like the strip club scenes and whatever. But this is a really good biopic. Seeing O'Shea Jackson Jr. play his father is very odd, and probably would have been a really weird experience playing that character or playing Ice Cube. But yeah, great cast, really solid music, very good story. It does feel a little cliche, mainly towards the end, but still very well done. Then we have the original Straw Dogs on Criterion. Watched as a kind of blind buy, and watching this for the first time, it's a decent movie, but a lot of like these 70s revenge movies like Last House on Your Left and The Hills of Eyes. I understand why it was shocking for the time. It just doesn't really affect that much for me now. You know, this and the remake, I think both have a story where I can see why it's interesting. Again, it's a decent movie, but I don't love it as much as some people do. I feel like the tension building of Dustin Hoffman slowly going over the edge doesn't really, I don't know, like the villains alone just don't really have that sting that I think you would have for a revenge film like this. But still a good movie. Then we have Suicide Squad. Then we have Superbad. One of the essential comedies of the 2000s, which I've seen once. I like it. That's why I own it on Blu-ray. You know, we got Ive McLovin, a huge cast that has a lot of up-and-comers. Some established actors like Bill Hader and Seth Rogen are also in here. Some funny stuff, good story, but not one of my favorites of all time. Then we have this 3-pack of Superman the movie, Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, and Superman Returns. Then we have Super Troopers 1 and 2. I saw both of these when Super Troopers 2 is coming out in the spring of 2018, and seeing both of these for the first time, I really enjoyed the first movie. I enjoyed the second one. I don't think it's nearly as good, but still I think it's funny in my opinion. Then we have both versions of Suspiria. So we have the Dario Argento Suspiria, and we have Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria. I really enjoy both these movies. Speaking on the original Suspiria, has a lot of creepy moments. I love the score by Goblin. The colorful aesthetics to the film is really well done. Makes it stand out amongst the giallo films of the 70s. Really solid cast. Really creepy designs. Like whenever you see like the woman towards the end, with like who's like scarred and covered in glass, and she's like holding a knife. Really creepy stuff. Has some cheesy moments, but it's a very cool product of its time. But I do massively prefer the 2018 remake, which does a lot of great things by being completely different from the original. Very muted color palette, very much focuses on a different story, and has a lot of different things with the characters, which I won't spoil. Fantastic cast, great cinematography. I love the score by Tom York. Just everything about this film is firing on all cylinders. Genuinely is scary, genuinely is creepy, intense, enthralling. For a 2.5 hour movie, it never bored me. I just had a complete blast in this film, and it's actually in my top 15 of all time. I love this movie. Then we have Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, getting into the tease right here. Another great comedy from Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. Just really stacked cast. Lost Sacha Baron Cohen as the villain. Just great stuff. When they're praying for during the KFC scene, great stuff. Just a very fun comedy that I have a great time with. Then we have Taxi Driver, one of the essential Scorsese movies, based on the movie that kind of inspired Joker, all in the King of Comedy, which I sadly do not own yet. But kind of like the first meetup of Robert De Niro and Scorsese. Great stuff about a guy who's kind of treated badly by society, starts to go off the edge, and tries to save this woman in prostitution, played by Jodie Foster. Great performance there from a child actress at the time. Just a very good character study about somebody that just gets pushed over a little too far. Then we have Ted. Probably the funniest thing Seth MacFarlane's done in the past decade, 15 years, whatever. A very funny story about basically like this child bear that grows up, and Mark Wahlberg grows up to be a stoner and a complete prick. Very funny stuff, very funny lines, fuck you, thunder, you can suck my dick. Very funny stuff in this movie. Mila Kunis also very great in the movie as the girlfriend. Just a very fun movie. I'm saying fun a lot. Then we have Tenet, the latest mind-bending thriller from Christopher Nolan that nobody understood. I saw this twice in theaters, saw it a little bit at one of a friend's houses on New Year's Eve. I seen this the second time. It's definitely helped out the movie because I understood a lot more about the espionage side of things. The time reversion stuff is still very confusing to me, and I think the film was just way too cryptic and way too... It just dropped a lot of stuff in your lap way too quickly to where you really couldn't process what was going on enough to really enjoy the movie, in my opinion. But still, I think it's really well done. Great cast. I love the score by Ludwig Göransson. It's not Hans Zimmer, but I still think it's a really good replacement. John David Washington, I like him in the lead. I really like Robert Pattinson and their friendship. Very good action scenes, very well directed. I just think that, if it wasn't so pretentious in a lot of spots, I think it would have been a lot more well received. Then we have The Terminator and T2 on 4K, the only Terminator films that exist in my mind. Classic movies, I mean, what else can I say about them that hasn't already been said about them? They are absolute mind-bending classics. They are brilliant. James Cameron's a genius, and I wish he did more films like this instead of doing Avatar sequels, but alas, we still have those movies in our memories. Then we have the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a complete classic of the genre. I think this is like one of the few 70s grindhouse style horror films that genuinely is still creepy today. I think that the macabre aspect of this movie still can affect you, even if you've seen so many other horror films. 40 years later, I think the movie is just very creepy, very suspenseful. The score is just so creepy, and the fact that it's based off real life murders makes it even more unsettling. Leatherface is genuinely terrifying in this movie. It's just so intense and just so realistic that it's just so uncomfortable. It's a very well done movie. I don't understand why this became a franchise, but alas, this is still the best one of the series. We'll see what they did with the Old Man Leatherface movie coming out next. I think it's coming out later this year. We'll see what happens, but still, that's the best of this series. Then we have There Will Be Blood. Very good movie. Probably my third favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. Probably his most essential of his biopic period piece movies. Dan Day-Lewis, I drink your milkshake, probably his best performance in my opinion. Paul Dano as his son is also great. Very good period piece chronicling over the course of decades and just showing just how badly this oil rig can go off at any moment, and just great stuff. Then we have This Is the End. Probably my favorite Seth Rogen comedy of all time. I love the concept of basically him and all of his celebrity buddies being stuck in James Franco's mansion while the apocalypse is going on. Very funny banter between all the cast. Very funny cameos, some great stuff in here. Just relentlessly entertaining, relentlessly funny, and relentlessly rewatchable. I love this movie. Then we have John Carpenter's The Thing. Prepare to be mad at me because I think this is a good movie. I really enjoy it. I don't love it, though. I do find it overrated in a lot of aspects. Mainly the characters. I'd never really gravitated towards the characters that much, and because the characters are essential to make you care about the story, and especially the ending, I never really grasped towards these characters. I don't know, they've always felt like at arm's distance to me, and that sucks because I loved everything else about this movie. The practical effects are probably the best out of any film ever made. The score is fantastic. The directing from John Carpenter is on point from a cinematography perspective, from an action perspective, from a lighting perspective. Just everything about this film is really well done. It's just the characters I just cannot get behind. I don't know why. I've seen it multiple times, but I just never got into the characters. Then we have the Thor trilogy. We got Thor The Dark World, and we got Thor Ragnarok. Then we got 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri on 4K. The latest film from Martin McDonagh. Same guy that did In Bruges and 7 Psychopaths. Also really good movies I need to get at some point. But for this film, it's probably my favorite out of the 3 films he's done thus far, or at least the ones I've seen. Great cast. I love the entire cast of this film. Frances McDormand, Woody Harrelson, Sam Rockwell. They're all really fun in this movie. Really well paced, really funny. Good story that kind of unravels as the film progresses. Just a very, very well done movie. Then we have Titanic, another huge classic from James Cameron. Really enjoyed this movie. It definitely is a little too long, but I will say it is really well done. Huge props to the production design team is fantastic. The acting is really good. It does get you invested in all the characters, and when stuff starts going wrong, and knowing the tragedy of it all, of the real life event, is really well done, and it gets you engaged throughout the entire movie. I can see why this was such a marvel back when it came out, because the special effects are still very well done even today with how it blends practical miniatures and, visual effects. Really well done movie. Then we have Tomb Raider, my second favorite video game movie of all time. I have since played the main Square Enix trilogy of games that have recently come out, and I've really grown to like Lara Croft as a character, and this film Definitely doesn't really do her justice that much, but I still think it's pretty solid amongst the other stuff we've gotten out of the video game genre for films. I like Alicia Vikander in the title character of Lara Croft. I think she's really good. I like Walton Goggins as the villain. He's always fun to see on screen. I like the action. It's pretty well done. Pretty, it's an enjoyable action film, but it could have been a lot better. Hopefully the sequel improves. Then we have Top Gun on 4K. Need for Speed. I mainly bought this because of the sequel that's coming out in a few months right here. Hopefully it doesn't get delayed again. Great story, really fun characters. Just a very enjoyable 80s movie that just relishes in the 80s cheese and masculinity. Then we got Total Recall, the original, on 4K. Get your ass to Mars. Very terrible Schwarzenegger accent. I'm not good at accents if you can't already tell. But yeah, another great Paul Verhoeven movie. A great blending of practical and visual effects. Great production design. Great acting. A lot of funny lines. Always keeps you engaged. Always keeps you on the edge of your seats. Very entertaining. Relentlessly rewatchable. And just a very fun pace. Okay. Then we have the Toy Story quadrilogy right here. Probably my favorite animated series of all time. The original Toy Story is my favorite animated film of all time, probably. Love this movie to death. Yes, the animation, I can understand why it doesn't hold up for a lot of people, but it still holds up to me. Great story, great characters, great introduction to the world. Then we get to Toy Story 2, just absolutely a movie that follows up on the first film. I used to not like this movie that much when I was little, but I've really grown around to really appreciate it. Really great characters, a lot of fun stuff introduced in this movie, and very mature and very sad in a lot of aspects, but it still works very well. Then we have Toy Story 3. Great conclusion to the trilogy. Very mature, a lot better than it should have been. Just very emotional movie. Has a great villain in Lasso the Teddy Bear. Great sequences like the furnace or where like they're escaping Sunnyside Daycare. Just great movie. And then we get to Toy Story 4, which is a movie that I had no expectations for. I was dreading this movie. I always detested this movie when it got announced just because I was like, Toy Story 3 ended off the series so well. What are you going to do that's going to, justify doing another movie? And they did. They justified doing a fantastic conclusion to Woody's story. Bringing back Bo Peep was a great choice, and she's the best that she's ever been in the series. Great characters. It's still my least favorite out of the four, but still I think it's very entertaining between Forky and Duke Boom, all the characters that we get like Ducky and Bunny. Just it's a very pleasant movie that I enjoy. I love all four of these movies. Then we get to Training Day. This is a movie that I got from Big Lots for about $5, and I was like, I gotta get this because this is a fantastic movie. And probably my favorite film from Antoine Fuqua, and probably my favorite Denzel Washington performance. King Kong ain't got shit on me. I love movies that are told over the course of one day, that are told very effectively, and just showing the story about Denzel Washington being this undercover cop and realizing that you realize that he's not what he says he is, and you got Ethan Hawke being like the new rookie on the force, and just the dynamic between these two actors are so well done, and the film just constantly keeps up in the ante, and it's just so damn entertaining. And then last for this stack, we got Trainspotting. Another fantastic Danny Boyle movie, probably my favorite of his career. The film that kind of defined his career, in my opinion. Fantastic cast, great stuff that doesn't really shy away from the the disparity of drug use, especially the scene with the baby in the hotel will fuck you up. Great soundtrack, great characters, great acting, great direction and writing. Just overall, just a very well done movie, and that should have stayed one film and not a sequel, because I don't like the sequel. But for this standalone film, I really enjoy it. Alright, now we're going to get to the final stat of this video, which thankfully, because it's been quite a long road. First, we're starting off with Tropic Thunder, a very funny comedy, which I haven't seen in quite a while, but I do remember really enjoying it, about these actors that are filming a war movie right next to an actual war going on. Very funny, huge cast, a lot of fun characters in this film, just very funny, and yeah, I just really need to watch this again. It's very fun. Then we have, getting to the used, we have the Istra 177 trilogy by M. Night Shyamalan, his superhero stuff. So, starting off, we got Unbreakable, one of my favorite films of all time, one of my favorite superhero films of all time. Absolute masterpiece, in my opinion, my favorite Shyamalan movie. Then we get to Split, which I think is a very good successor, which we had no idea going into the film that would be a successor to Unbreakable, but very good, great performance by by James McAvoy as the Horde. and Antenna Joy, just great, scaled down psychological thriller. And then we get to Glass, which a lot of people really didn't like, and I understand why. I thought it was a decent conclusion, definitely the weakest of the 3 films, but I still thought it was satisfying enough to what Shyamalan was going for, if you know what he was going for going into the film. But it's definitely not the most satisfying film, I will say. Then we get to Uncut Gems, which will probably replace this Blu-ray with the Criterion one coming out in a couple months, just because this Blu-ray only has one special feature, which is just embarrassing for a Blu-ray that costs $25 to buy from first price. But regardless, I haven't seen it since theaters, but I do remember really enjoying it. I think this is better than Good Time in my opinion. I saw this Christmas Eve the year it came out, and I really enjoyed it. Adam Sandler, I want to see more stuff like this from him because I love his dramatic work. If you hear my spiel on Punch Drunk Love, great performance from him, great directing from the Safdie brothers, just a very, very intense movie that will always keep you on the edge of your seat, but I wish I could hear more of the dialogue that wasn't just, people just talking over each other, but regardless. Then we get to Under the Skin, a very off-the-kilter performance from Scarlett Johansson as this alien that, takes over people, very well directed by Jonathan Glazer. The scenes whenever you see her take over these certain people just randomly, it's just very... How do I describe it? I can't describe it. You just need to watch the film for yourself because it's very, very unique. Then we get to the Underworld Ultimate Collection. This contains all 5 of the Underworld films with Kate Beckinsale. I really enjoyed this series. It's kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. I do legitimately enjoy the first 3 movies. They're pretty fun. Awakening, I can have some dumb fun with, but Blood Wars, I do think is pretty mediocre. But this is just a very fun vampire series starring her. I forgot what's her name. Selena, I believe, is the main character's name. But yeah, her romance with I forgot the main guy's name from the first 2 films. But the romance is good. The action is really well handled by Len Wiseman. It's just a very well done series in my opinion. I enjoy it. Then we get to Unfriended. Similar to Searching, this is a movie that I did not expect to be good whatsoever. And it was actually pretty engaging and pretty intense for a film that's entirely told on a desktop. Very well done from the scares. The low budget actually does help out the movie, and it feels intense when it needs to be. I didn't really care for the sequel that much, but for this first movie, I had a good time with it. Then we get to Us, Jordan Peele's second outing as this horror director. Pretty solid movie. I did a comparison video of this to Get Out back when it came out a couple years ago, and I will say I do prefer Get Out to this movie. I think this film has a lot more plot holes. If you look at it literally, great performance by Lupita Nyong'o as the 2 main title characters. And the rest of the family is pretty good in the movie. Great score by Michael Abels. Great production design. I love the red suit and with the golden scissors and the underground system where all they live at. Great kills. Very well done. It's just that there are some plot holes that do kind of keep me from loving it on the level of Get Out. Then we get to Up, another great Pixar film from the 2000s. Who directed this? Pete Docter, once again, fantastic work from him. Great cast. Ed Asner as, what's the guy's name? Crap. Carl. No. Yes, his name's Carl. Russell's the kid on the cover. Great cast. I love Kevin the Bird and the dog. Great score from, who is this? Michael Giacchino. Never fails with a Pixar score. I mean, look at The Incredibles. Great animation as always. Great story and just very engaging, very much an enjoyable experience. Saddest opening of a Pixar film ever made, but I still think the film's still great beyond that. Then we have The Upside, the remake of The Intouchables, which I still have not seen the original, but for this version, I enjoy it. I'm a huge fan of Bryan Cranston from Breaking Bad, and he does a great performance here. His friendship with Kevin Hart blossoming throughout the movie is very well done. I like Nicole Kidman in the movie. A very sweet movie, very much a feel-good movie, and I think it's really well done. Then we get to Venom. And we get this 3-pack of DC movies. We got Viva Vendetta, Watchmen, the director's cut, and Constantine. Then we get to VHS and VHS 2. 2 awesome horror anthology movies, which I really enjoy. Both the segments in these movies are just really well done. Like, especially the one in the first film about like the little foreign girl that ends up being a monster, or in the second movie about like the devil coming out of the ground. And like there's one where like there's like a zombie apocalypse happening from like a GoPro perspective. These 2 films are awesome. VHS Viral sucked, but for these 2 films, it's just amazing. I really enjoy both of these films. Then we get to Videodrome, Long Live the Flesh. Awesome Cronenberg horror movie, one of my favorites of his. I actually kind of like this more than The Fly, to be honest with you, and Scanners. You know, James Woods as his Tao character, I keep saying that a lot. James Woods as the main character is really well done. He does a great performance. David Cronenberg's gore and just the way he shoots this movie is very atmospheric and very void of just, you know, it keeps you, it's stuff that you won't forget. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, great practical work, great atmosphere oozing throughout the cinematography and the direction and the acting. Really well written, just a great movie. Then we get to The Visit, M. Night Shyamalan's first small budget movie outside After Earth, which was his last big blockbuster, and kind of like starting off this revival era for him. I enjoy it. It's a pretty enjoyable enough found footage movie, has a solid twist, good enough characters, some wonky comedy in the mix, but still I had a good time with it. Then we get to WALL-E. I can't stop with the bad impressions, but getting into the W's, we got WALL-E, another fantastic Pixar film from the 2000s. They were just on a streak, man, and they still have yet to kind of get their groove back. But a great movie that still sadly holds up today, even more so than when it came out 13 years ago. It ages like wine. But great story, fantastic soundtrack, love the animation, love the score. The characters are very simplistic, but they have a lot of weight to them as the film progresses, and just it makes you care about the environment so much more. Then we get to Wanted, a very fun, over-the-top comic book movie. Kind of my introduction to James McAvoy. Angelina Jolie is great. Morgan Freeman's a villain is also very well done. The score is great. Chris Pratt, you see him playing a dick very early on. He's very enjoyable. Good action, fun story, fun characters. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but I mean, has a good time with it. Then we get to Warrior, a fantastic drama by Gavin O'Connor. Same guy that did The Accountant and Miracle with Kurt Russell. And The Way Back with Ben Affleck too. Great sports drama basically about these two brothers who are from different sides of the tracks. One's a vet from Afghanistan or Iraq, I think, who's trying to raise money for one of his fallen brother's funeral. And then Joel Edgerton plays a dad who's a struggling teacher that cannot save up enough money to pay off his rents for his house, and he doesn't want to go homeless with his family. So basically, these two brothers enter a boxing ring because they were both former boxers. Decide to go in like this UFC ring and start like going up in these ranks in this competition, and eventually have to fight each other. And it's very, very engaging and very, very intense. Then we get to Waves. I covered on the channel a few months ago an underrated films. My favorite film, Betray Edward Schultz. Probably my favorite film that's come out in 2019, I think this year came out. Beautiful story, love the score, love the characters. It goes in different ways that you don't see coming. The film's mainly split in two different ways, two different storylines going on, and both are fantastic and are just, it's engaging, it's heartbreaking, it's sweet when it needs to be, it's sad when it needs to be. It's a beautiful, brilliant family drama, and please check it out if you haven't seen it yet. Then we get to The Way, Way Back, a very enjoyable summer movie that kind of oozes the holiday or oozes the atmosphere of a summer break. A great cast, basically about this like introverted teen that gets a job at this a theme park, this water park, and slowly becomes more outgoing, and as he has his romancing with Anna Sophia Robb. Sam Rockwell as like the head of this owner of this water park is also very funny. Just a very sweet movie, great cast. Very well done, has some great messages in it, and it's just very, very lighthearted and fun. Then we get to We're the Millers, very enjoyable comedy. Probably the biggest thing that Jason Sudeikis has done in his career thus far. Basically about these four strangers that basically have to act as a family, so Jason Sudeikis can get drugs over the border, so he can score a bunch of money and split with Jennifer Aniston and Emma Roberts. Very funny movie, has a lot of good moments in this. Just a very enjoyable movie. Then we get to What We Do in the Shadows, my favorite film from Taika Waititi. Hilarious comedy about these vampires in New Zealand. Great stuff. Just really fun chemistry between the actors. Has that sort of Aussie humor that Taika Waititi is known for. Just a lot of fun, great characters, really funny, and just consistently entertaining. And I've not seen the FX series, but I don't think he would hold a candle to this movie. Then we have Whiplash, my favorite film from Damien Chazelle. intense as hell. Like a movie about just this drummer trying to make it up in the music ranks. You expect it to be entertaining enough, or at least interesting, but this movie, man, it keeps you on your toes of the entire runtime. I mean, J.K. Simmons, he deserved that Oscar, man. He is so great in this movie. Probably his best performance, which is saying a lot. The direction is stellar. The music is fantastic, too, especially Caravan. Great directing, great writing, great pacing, great acting all around from Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons. Just fantastic stuff. Then we get to Widows, an amazing film by Steve McQueen. Did not expect this movie to be as good as it was when I saw it in theaters. Just intense as hell. Great story about basically these widows having to take on the mantle of these bank robbers. Basically finishing this heist that their husband set up before all of them were executed. Great story held by great actresses and actors alike. Great direction, great story, great underground crime movie that is just very intense, unpredictable, and just you won't forget it. Then we have The Witch, or The Vivitch, whatever you want to call it as. The first film I watched from Robert Eggers, same guy that did The Lighthouse. Probably everyone's introduction to Anya Taylor-Joy, who's the new It Girl basically now. Great small-scale horror film basically about this curse that takes upon this family after they're basically banished out of their hometown, and it's just very unsettling, very mesmerizing, very just unforgettable in a lot of spots, and it's just, man, it is just... It's very dark. I'll just say that. Then we have The Wolverine. I don't know why I said that weirdly. And then we also have Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 1984. Next up, we have the Cornetto trilogy. I place this into the W's because of The World's End. For some reason, it's placed on top. But we have The World's End, The Hot Fuzz, and Shaun of the Dead. I think two of these films are fantastic, especially Hot Fuzz. That's actually my favorite of the three movies. World's End is probably my least favorite Edgar Wright movie, but it still is a pretty damn good alien invasion movie. I just enjoy all three of these movies. Just Edgar Wright, he's just an amazing filmmaker, and I cannot wait to see what he does with Last Night in Soho. Then we have Wrath of Man, the latest film from Guy Ritchie. Definitely strays away from a lot of the aspects that you would think from the trailers and from like the opening 30-40 minutes of this film, but slowly it shows you Guy Ritchie's style where he flips flops between timelines in his story. Jason Statham is awesome as M. The main character is just awesome. Josh Hartnett's pretty good. Eddie Marsan, really cool. Kind of like the mainstays for Guy Ritchie's cast stick here and are just very good as always. Good production design, good acting, good writing, solid mob movie, heist movie, really well done. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. Then we have both Wreck-It Ralph and Ralph Breaks the Internet. Two pretty solid Disney animated movies. I definitely preferred the first Wreck-It Ralph I saw in theaters and definitely has some nostalgia ties towards it. Nostalgia tied towards it. And Ralph Breaks the Internet, I saw in theaters, haven't seen it since theaters, but I do remember having a good time with it. I do think the internet references are a little outdated nowadays, but I would like to see a third one, personally. I think that these characters are really engaging, they're very fun, lighthearted, and interesting. It's just that, there are definitely some issues, but they're both pretty good animated movies. Then we have some of the X-Men films, pretty much the best of the X-Men franchise in my opinion. So we have X-Men, X2, X-Men United, X-Men First Class, and X-Men Days of Future Past. All awesome movies. Trying to stack these up. Alright, we're so done. We're at the Z's. So starting off with Zodiac, awesome from David Fincher, very disturbing. The fact it's based off a real-life series of murders that was never caught, the murder was never caught, just is very fascinating, and you can see the performances in this film are just so devastating, like Robert Downey Jr. and Mark Ruffalo and Jake Gyllenhaal, how these characters, similar to like what I talked about with Dark Water, just seeing these people just over the course of years and decades just deteriorate into nothing because they're just so obsessed with finding out the Zodiac Killer is very intense, very disturbing, very just creepy stuff in this film that would just keep you on edge. Not very rewatchable because it's quite long and just quite draining as an experience, but still very, very, it's a great movie. That's all I'll say. Then we have the Zombieland duology, so we have Zombieland and Zombieland Double Tap. I enjoyed both these movies. A lot of people shit on the second movie, but I do have a lot of good memories towards this movie because it was actually the first film I got to watch for free at my movie theater job back when it came out nearly 2 years ago. And both these films are just very entertaining. I love the cast, I love the characters, the soundtracks are really fun, the style of like showing all the different rules of how to kill zombies is also really fun, and surviving the apocalypse. Just very good directing from Ruben Fleischer, very fun characters, they're just fun zombie movies. And then the last Blu-ray that I own, Zootopia. I'm not a huge Disney guy. I own Wreck-It Ralph. That's basically like the extent of the Disney movies I own right now. But Zootopia was definitely an exception to that because it's a really good movie that builds up the world very well. Great characters, very fun references, respects your intelligence, has a decent twist in it, which although Disney has a lot of issue with kind of repeating the same issues that Pixar does, I still think it's really well done. Really fun characters, interesting world that's very fun to explore, and I am really excited to see what they do with the sequel series on Disney Plus coming out, I think, next year. So yeah, I can't wait to see what more comes out of this universe. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my Blu-ray collection. I hope if you stuck around for these, 4 or 5 hours, or however long this video is, I respect you, and I just, props to you for sticking around this long. But anyways, that's the end of the video. If you want to see more from this channel, please like, comment, and subscribe for more content. And yeah, that's about it. I'm CBMF Productions, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.